Gangster. 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 Gangster.
So I want to sing an old song called Plant the Tree, and it was written in the late 1780s when Ireland was seeking a republican dream, and they were hoping for the French to come and liberate them from tyranny. So it was considered a treasonous song. It was considered an act of treason to sing it by a secret parliamentary committee. I'm not sure if that's been repealed, so you'll have to forgive me. See Erin's sun's yon rising beam, the eastern hills adorning. Now freedom's sun begins to gleam and breaks a glorious morning. Despotic sway from France is chased and church delusions vanished. Our isle shall never be disgraced if these dread fiends be banished. They come, see myriads come of Frenchmen to relieve us. Seize the pike, beat the drum. They come, my friends, to save us, whilst trembling despots fly this land to shun impending danger. We'll stretch forth our fraternal hand to hail each welcome stranger. That castle which through ages past for despots was appointed, you sovereign people claim at last, for you're the Lord's anointed. Those useless baubles that adorned our late viceroyal ninnies, now to the crucible return, produce your useful guineas. Those nicknames Marquis, Lord and Earl that set the crowd a-gazin', we prize as hogs esteem a pearl, those patents set a-blazin'. No more they'll vote away our wealth to please a king or queen, sirs, but gladly pack away by stealth or face the guillotine, sirs. The Parliament, to say forsooth they represent the nation, shall scamper east, west, north and south or feel our indignation. The Speaker's mace to current coin we presently will alter, and ribbons lately thought so fine will fit each with a halter. No more our tithe will grumbling throw to those who on us trample, but where he will each man shall go to reason's purest temple. Erin Gobra each choir shall sing, the hard oppressed to cheer, sirs. Now those curse sounds, God save the king, discordant great our ears, sirs. The nation's bank has been put up to swindling most completely. In forgeries it e'en can stoop to guinea notes so neatly, and when it gets your solid coin, the custom house marauder in forgeries will red letter join to the back of town he'll order. Those lawyers who with face of brass and wigs replete with learning, whose far-fetched quibbling quirks surpass republicans discerning, for them to ancient forms be staunch, 'twill suit all worthy fellows. Injustice spare one legal branch, I mean reserve the gallows. And when the glorious work is done, rejoice with one another. To plowshares beat the sword and gun, now every man's your brother. Detested wars shall ever cease with kind fraternization. All will be harmony and peace, and the whole world one nation. Plant the tree, fair freedom's tree, midst dangers, wounds, and slaughter. Erin's green fields, its soil shall be, her tyrant's blood, its water. Plant the tree, fair freedom's tree, midst dangers, wounds, and slaughter. Erin's green fields, its soil shall be, her tyrant's blood, its water.
Come on. Yo. It's the Gangsta Hippy podcast. We're back. Episode 13. We got my man Liu behind the ones and twos. And we've got a special guest today. Good friend of mine, brother, local EA. Well, I don't know how to box him in, to be fair, because he's a little bit of everything, do you know what I mean? But the very talented Mo Ameen. How are you, my brother?
Going good.
Nice to see you, bro.
You too.
It's been a minute.
Thanks for having me around.
Yeah. We had to get you on there. It's, we was always going to get you on, just waiting for the right time, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Bucky is asleep somewhere, hungover from last night, so...
Well, as long as he's well.
So big up Bucky, and I'm sure we'll
Big up
see you
Bucky.
next time, do you know what I mean? Big up Ixa as always, big up everyone. So yeah, it's lovely to have you here, bro. How you been?
Yeah, it's been all eventful. Yeah, working away, doing construction work for the last while, and joined the Palestine Solidarity Campaign.
Okay.
So I'm on the committee for that, and yeah, um, keeping busy at the mosque and stuff. And
Yeah.
kids are growing up and doing well in school, and so busy.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll go into all of them things. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about the song that you opened up with?
Yeah, so Plant the Tree is a kind of Republican anthem. Um, and it's really like reads like a list of grievances,
Yeah.
that Ireland had aspirations, breaking free from tyranny, and yeah, there's a Republican vision. Many Protestants joined Republican cause. So this is the Liberty Tree is it was planted in Paris, and other like Republican movements use this symbol as well and
Okay.
planted liberty
Yeah.
trees. So that's what the song is referring to, really.
Right. And excuse my ignorance on certain things. By title, you're talking about the English tyranny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The crown, the force of the crown.
Okay.
Yeah.
The monarchy forcing themselves on Ireland and other places what they was doing. So that's what, about 230 years old, the song.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what is France's part in all that? How did they
Well,
get involved, or?
They were fighting for a republic there. So what the revolution that happened in America, the War of Independence and the Republican Revolution there,
Yeah.
was then they assisted France in their Republican fight.
Right. Okay.
And Ireland was hoping to get then assistance from France.
Right. And did
But
they?
it didn't materialize. No.
It never happened.
No. I wouldn't say there was no assistance, but there was like hopes that large forces would land and
Yeah.
help, but no, they didn't.
They never came through.
No.
And
So
here we are now.
Yeah.
And you're singing the song all these years later, and they still kind of resonate, don't they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of that, like I think, resonates now. When we talk about Parliament and the Nation's Bank,
Yeah.
same kind of things, like,
Yeah.
and even like God Save the King.
Yeah.
I think that's why the song is considered treasonous, is because it says, "Now those cursed sounds, God save the King."
Yeah.
Grate our ears.
Yeah. 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 Of course. Yeah. Being forced into what's happening in China at the minute is crazy, isn't it?
In what way?
Well, they're squeezing the pressure on Tibet, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? To have Tibet as they claim it as old China, don't they? So
Yeah.
from things I've sort
Yeah,
of
there's no formal border.
Yeah, I think that's only a matter of time before they kind of try and expand and take that. But
Well, also Hong Kong.
what are the Muslims called in China? The
Uyghurs.
Uyghurs, yeah, because they're having a rough time, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the Chinese ambassador guy that I was watching on Al Jazeera the other day was just saying that they have to like pledge allegiance to one China and all that, basically.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They have to show their kind of faith, yeah. And
Yeah.
a lot of them have been put into detention centres, and basically they have to be kind of re-educated before they can leave.
Yeah,
So they have to be conforming to the Chinese state.
yeah.
But
Yeah, it's crazy what's happening there. So yeah, your kids are all good, family's all blessed.
yeah, my kids are learning Arabic,
Nice.
doing a bit of Quran, and my boy's doing jiu-jitsu, and he's doing
Nice.
really well.
So a righteous man that will kick your ass.
Yeah, and he wants to study sociology as well.
Yeah,
like, so,
nice.
yeah. In fact, I was talking to him about music, and I was like, "What kind of music do you like? What's meaningful to you?" And he said, "I think the rebel songs."
Yeah, nice.
Because they're historical, and so like that. Yeah, that was nice, because like that's why I like them. They're stories.
Yeah.
They're historical stories.
Even how
And it's an art form.
the shanty song blew up, didn't it, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the old Bolton song. some
Yeah.
young lad sang it on TikTok, didn't it? And it just went viral. And
Yeah.
there's
Like-
still a place for that, isn't there?
Like there's loads of books on these street ballads, and they were kind of like news broadcasters, political broadcasters, and people would learn different songs, and they would stand there with their printed sheets, and then they would sell them and stuff.
Right,
So
yeah.
there was an industry there for,
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they weren't selling CDs, right? They
Yeah.
weren't burning CDs back in them
Of
days.
course, yeah.
So it's like stand there with some nice
With some scripts
typed
for
out
sale,
script, yeah.
Mad.
And but the thing is that like Irish people were barred from a lot of professional, administrative, military posts. Like there
Right.
was, you know, it wasn't a glass ceiling; it was a concrete ceiling.
Right.
You know, in terms of where they could be in society, and there was a whole recollection of ancient Irish art, ancient poetry, music. You know, people didn't stop playing the bowron, you know, and we didn't stop playing hurling, and we didn't like give up any of these old traditions, you know,
Yeah.
from the time of Christ kind of thing. So there was artisans there. So when we talk about street ballads, like you're talking about somebody who wanted to be a profession, you know, like singing was in their life, you
Yeah.
know, but in order to do that, they would have to take to the streets,
Yeah.
you know. In order to get their songs out, they'd have to take to the streets because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be allowed within centres, you know.
Yeah.
So like some of the songs are like just really lovely, great kind of anthems. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of art forms to it, you know, and subtleties and everything like that.
So I'm guessing, and they were risking their life or freedom maybe with some of these songs.
At one stage, it was illegal to speak Irish in Ireland, you know, or you know that would be a law that could be exercised.
Yeah.
It's like if people didn't like that you were it'd be, you know, imagine like you get people getting paranoid that foreigners here are
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about them.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Yeah,
But for there, it was like the English would be like, you're planning something, kind
Yeah,
of thing,
yeah,
you
in
know,
their own
because you're
country
speaking
as
your own
well.
language, like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So it was like Irish speaking was banned. And then a lot of kind of cultural pastimes were banned and stuff. So really, like in a modern rebellion, began in the hurling pitches, the Gaelic Games pitches,
Yeah.
especially in Cork, where they said you can't come in if you don't speak Irish,
Right. Okay.
you know. And there's even pubs to this day in Dublin
Yeah.
where you can only speak Irish.
Right.
So I'd be struggling.
Yeah.
Like I could order a pint,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and I could have a quick chat.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be able to get into a meaningful conversation,
Right,
like
okay.
because you know you
So
learn.
how do you say can I have a pint of Guinness in Irish then?
But Whitelum, Hain, Guinness, oh,
Okay.
I'd like to drink a Guinness. I'd like a Guinness to drink.
Yeah.
An Will Cadagum, Guinness all.
Is there one? Has always been one language in Ireland, like Irish language.
Gaelic, yeah,
Yeah. That's that's what it's called, Gaelic. Yeah.
yeah.
Gaelic language. What part of Ireland are you from?
Dublin originally.
So you're
Born in
from
Dublin.
you're born in Dublin, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like growing up in Dublin?
That was alright. I was there till I was about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I went my first school, right? My first primary school had 2 teachers, and our classes were 4 or 5 people.
Right.
So it was a school down the road, and we had 4 classes in one room and 4 classes in another.
Right. Okay.
For the whole of the primary school.
Yeah, mad.
So the teacher broke the day up and gave us a bit of homework here, but you know, then went on to the next class, gave
Yeah,
them a
yeah.
bit of homework, and I knew I then would go to a children's home until my mother finished work,
Right.
and then she'd come pick me up, and then we lived around the corner. Yeah, and then we lived in a nice kind of apartment, a good sized apartment, around the corner from the children's home. So that was all quite easy. The school was up the road.
Yeah.
The children's home was there. Our house was there.
Yeah.
And then I moved to school, and Mum got a house
Yeah.
further out, like
Right.
about 5 miles out from where the children's home and that was. And that was a bigger school and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like education early on was, yeah, a bit piecemeal, let's
Yeah.
say. Like just...
When you say the teacher was Was you literally in separate classes, so the teacher would bounce between classes, or you was all in one room?
All in one room, yeah.
Oh, right,
So it's
okay.
more like tables in a room.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, growing up Dublin's a great city. But that was kind of it. Like I knew a lot of kids in this children's home who lived in the children's home, but I didn't know my dad.
Right.
I didn't meet him until 4 years ago in Thetford,
Oh wow.
just down the road. So it was me and mum growing up, and
No brothers, sisters.
not single.
Yeah.
Um,
So you got all the attention.
only
yeah.
child to a single parent.
Yeah.
That was grand.
Yeah.
Growing up, used to be into me comics and all of that kind of stuff. Go into Dublin City and just hang around comic shops and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
What, the Marvels and Beanos and all that sort of thing?
No, it was all like martial law and
Okay.
2000 AD originally, and then it was
Yeah,
all these other
Not
darker,
Viz.
darker comics, now Hellraiser and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, just mad pictures like
Yeah, dope.
nails stuck in heads.
Yeah,
Stick that in my wall.
Yeah, I remember I had a Hellraiser on my wall when I was a kid as well.
Yeah.
Terrified the shit out of me looking back, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I plastered like ceiling and floors, and everything was just absolutely covered in posters.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Was like, don't show a bit of paint.
Yeah.
So
how did you end up in England then?
So I was living. My mum got another house out in a town just on the border of Dublin and Wicklow. At the foot of the Wicklow Mountains, just the start of the Wicklow Mountains, large range, going down into the lochs and valleys, and then I ended up going to college in the Midlands.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see. I could have gone to college in the city, but I wanted to go to college in the country, and I'm really glad I did. And then when I came back, when I finished my studies in graphic design, visual communications, I was just like back in the hometown, and I was had a bit of a world view, and I was just a bit unsettled, and I didn't want to go into graphic design, commercial art and stuff. I just had an instinct was saying that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was leaning more towards. I was always a kind of in between art and design,
Yeah.
Like I could do graphic design for people, but then I like to do artistic stuff. So I went to Edinburgh for a bit, and my mate was there, so he put me up for a bit, and I got a job in a hotel. And then every month I just had this urge to go out and spray paint and stuff.
Okay.
So I started doing little murals and
Right, okay.
designs and stuff on the walls, like
In Scotland, yeah?
Yeah.
What part of Scotland was that?
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, yeah.
Around the city centre, really.
So did you tag, or was it just murals?
Yeah, it's just designs I was coming up with, like word forms and stuff like that.
Okay.
Starting that late to the game, obviously. 22 I was.
Yeah.
First got into that, but I did really enjoy it, and I enjoyed like going around finding a place that had, been already spray painted kind of thing, and thinking I'm not out to just put my name in the most beautiful spot here. I don't want to destroy any buildings,
Yeah.
It was like modern buildings.
Yeah.
This is a postmodern thing.
Yeah.
It's again, modern buildings is the target.
Yeah.
Those big blank things, like you see your buildings out here, the stairs, and you just think it'd be nice to have a design.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you don't want to see some things sprayed up, do you? Do you know what I mean? Like, ancient sites and nice things and all that. It's like, keep them as they are. It's funny, actually, the amount of people that's been on here who have done some form of graffiti or something, do you know what I mean, when they was young. It's
Primal urge,
Yeah.
Especially, like, you feel like you're not going to make your mark.
Yeah.
You decide, no, I will.
Graffiti. My first thing was setting fires, to be fair. I used to like setting fires.
A what?
Setting fires.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just little fires, big fires.
Oh, right.
Setting fires
Making your
over
mark,
the
I
woods.
see. I thought you were talking about painting, you did.
Oh, right, no.
Setting fire. So how did that
That's
just
watching
a wheelie bin.
Burn. Watching the world burn, do you know what I mean?
Just, where's that policeman gone?
So then you're in Edinburgh, and then how have you made your way down here?
So then I was in Edinburgh for 10 years, and ended up doing that graffiti work all around the schemes around Edinburgh, the kind of ghettos, proper ghettos.
Okay, yeah.
I moved out to a place as well, and I moved out to a place, and I joined a Christian community also in Edinburgh. That
Yeah.
was all kind of interesting. But I was going and doing spray painting in these poverty-stricken areas. People dying, like neighbours dying and stuff, and yeah. But it was so kind of real. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, dying from
Unreal.
what? Drugs, fire, what?
Yeah, legacy of drugs, neglect.
Yeah.
You know, it's sad. But people, like loads of people on the poverty line, you know, yeah, you got to stay healthy, like.
Yeah.
You know, you got to stay on top of it.
Because that stress will just take you under, won't it? And you know, poverty's the one thing that will take you under, innit? Do you know what I mean? The pressure, especially if you got kids and family and stuff like that, innit? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, physically and mentally.
Yeah.
But then, so I was with the Christian community for a while, and was really interested in it, like, and had a good part to play in it, you know. But then the whole war on terror kind of kicked off, and the whole kind of biblical references, biblical language, you know, Iraq was Babylon, and you know, the towers and all this kind of stuff going on, how that was being exploited, you know, and reaching out to the churches and who these people were, like spouting the message and quoting revelations and stuff. I was kind of like, we got to do something, like we got to like respond. And I was into like, I started making poetry from like Old Testament prophets and stuff, and was writing and turning the book of Job into a rap battle kind of thing.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff, just writing all this stuff, and but I was angry, like, and just it was kind of like you don't feel like you're deluded. It's like you gotta watch this because this is how things work. You know, so 1 million people marched against the war in Iraq, and they still went ahead. That doesn't mean that's pointless to go out and march, because then history will record that the government was that much out of sync with what people wanted, you know, and knew. Stop telling us lies. We don't want this war. Stop bullshitting on about democracy.
Yeah.
He ended up getting hung in a basement. Like, he got lynched, Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
You know, and for what? Because he ordered the executions of 250 Shia. That's what they got him with.
Yeah.
But George Bush had ordered the execution of over 500 people.
Yeah.
And one of them was like a 16-year-old mentally disabled black kid.
Right.
That's fine because it's all civilized.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's the death penalty and stuff like this. You know, and you're just like, there's no morality to this. You know, when
Just
Gordon
have it embedded in your head from a kid with the movies and everything, that when the American army come through, they're the good guys. When you see the American tanks and the helicopters, they're the good guys, and all the Arabs and they're all the bad guys in the movies, aren't they? Do you know what I mean?
And that's now, like, I mean, I think we're not necessarily beyond that stage, because like things like Fauda and other series kind of like they portray Arabs and Middle Eastern people in a certain way, like, you know, but there was such kind of contradictions. Like, I was like, so you're going to invade the richest country in the world, when it was the invasion of Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden, who's this guy? And it's like, wow, looks like a real pious man to be, you know, he looks like that person you presented to me that lives in a tent.
Yeah.
How is he the enemy of the, you know, the free world?
Yeah.
What's happening here? Like, you know what I mean? How is he the enemy? So, and you know, the richest country in the world is going to invade the poorest one of the poorest countries in the world, and to get what? Somebody going around the desert on the back of a donkey. All right, yeah, okay. So you just, you know, you map that onto the whole picture of Jesus that you presented me 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm baffled. I'm really baffled.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, we've got a name, we've got a picture. This is our enemy, right? So what's the story? Oh, the Taliban have him. Is that okay? And you're saying, give him up or we'll bomb you.
Yeah.
And so what did the Taliban say? No, what did they say? They wanted evidence.
Yeah.
Fuck them, like.
Yeah.
Bomb, bomb, bomb. Oh, that's how we play.
Yeah.
That's how we play. Right. you just you grow up and learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you're like, then you see other things happening, other failed states, Libya, and just a whole load of metal in there,
So
and we can't be honest. We can't be honest with ourselves.
Where in all of this did that make you turn to Islam?
Yeah. So when it was the lies that were being told about Muslims.
Yeah.
They're savage, kind of, they believe in war. They've got this thing called jihad. All right, jihad, what's that like? Oh, it's like holy war and stuff. All right, I'll check that out, yeah. All right, it's struggle, right? That's what it means, it's struggle, right? And, there's rules to this war.
Yeah.
What, you can't cut down a tree of your enemy.
Yeah.
What, you can't block the rivers.
Yeah.
You can't block the rivers, but that's good. And just learning these kind of things. And then also the historical stuff, then looking at, recent history, struggles in Lebanon, and again it was like it's kind of knowing, because Palestine was always an issue for me, and it'll always be an issue for Irish people, because it just mirrors, what happened to us, and the kind of lies and that I was part of the Christian community. I really liked the historical Jesus, but I just found that the Christians I was meeting were very kind of lukewarm, so let's say there's a bit in the Bible, and this is why I like the story of Jesus. It's not about did he really exist for me. That's beside the point. It's like, what am I taking from this?
Yeah.
But there's a bit where what the Pharisees, what the institutional Jews want to do with Jesus is trap him. And they want to trap him in public, and they want to get him on taxes.
Yeah.
And so he's a staunch, by any regard, he's a fundamentalist.
Yeah.
Right. And it turns out that he didn't take the Roman coin.
Right.
Which the Pharisees did.
Yeah.
Right. So they bought into the Roman currency, and this is why he's flipping tables at money changers, because they're doing like temple tax and changing it and then giving back Roman coins.
Right.
The Roman currency was devalued at the time.
Yeah.
So they were giving in like shekels and whatever they had, and then this was coming back to them. So he flips the tables on the money lenders, and then they try and trap him in public, and they know that his followers will turn against him if he says, "You pay your taxes."
Yeah.
They'll just lose faith in him.
Yeah.
But if he says, "Don't pay your taxes," then he can get done for like treason.
Yeah.
Tax evasion.
That's what they get them all on eventually.
Yeah, avoiding tax or death. So they go, "Should we pay our taxes?" And he goes, I haven't got a denarii. Have you got one? Well, yeah, we got one. And it says in the Bible, like the crowd, like were kind of astonished at this.
Yeah.
And you have to think, because they're seeing what he's doing.
Yeah.
I haven't got one of them coins.
Yeah.
That says Caesar is God.
Yeah.
Have you got one? Yeah, sure, of course we have, right? And then he goes, "Whose head is on it?" It's Caesar's. And he goes, "Well, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's." It's like, you bought into the currency, you pay the taxes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's a great economic point.
Yeah.
But the Christians I met, and many American Christians, have been duped into thinking, and just kind of go along with that it's like, actually that refers to political power.
Yeah.
That like, yeah, you just let the politicians have political power.
Yeah.
But you're still on the coin.
Yeah.
You've got this arse about face, like, like you're still buying into this thing.
You're playing the whole
That's
game
worse.
with them. Yeah.
You're paying the taxes, and then you're saying, "Yeah, you guys just do whatever you want."
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it.
So so that kind of thing, and then seeing like there was a strong thing about Islam. I started reading about modern history and just looking into Islam a bit, and then I was like, I'm a Muslim. But I didn't know any Muslims. But I thought this is what I believe. Like, I'm seeing stuff, and I'm thinking that sums it up. spells it out like. So then it was like I went to the mosque to sign up basically.
Is this in Scotland?
Yeah, in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I went to the main mosque there, but I went on a Friday and it was Jum, and there was loads of people pouring out the mosque.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, is the imam free?" And he said, "Oh, I'll probably come back in an hour." Like, and I just walked away thinking, "Oh, this doesn't feel right." You know, just sign up kind of thing. And I walked away and I thought, "No, what I need to do is actually get talking to Muslims and meet some Muslims." And I did it eventually, like, and got in with a group there, and they were mostly converts, and it was a very interesting thing because it was a Scottish man who had moved down to London and got into studying performing arts, then came across Sufism.
Okay.
Some might say it's the mystical. There's definitely a lot of subjective kind of reality. You know, it's experiential. It's looking at emotions. Experience as a thing. So he came across Sufism, found out that there were Sufi groups in Morocco. Went to Morocco, and met with some sheikhs,
Right.
Sufi sheikhs, and they said, Sufism is a part of Islam. You have to be a Muslim.
Right.
And he was just so on his path,
Yeah.
you know. So I have to convert, right? So he came back to England, convert to Islam, then went back for another trip to learn
Yeah.
more on Sufism, stayed with some sheikhs there. And then the sheikh there, Sheikh Muhammad ibn al-Habib, the sheikh there said to him, if you stay here, something might happen.
Right.
If you go back, something will happen.
Yeah.
And he came back, and then he basically organised a kind of Sufi squat, you know, amongst a load of flats and apartments, abandoned flats and apartments, and they took over this place for a little bit and
Right.
tried to get a religious group together.
Yeah.
And then they ended up moving up, eventually up to Norfolk,
Okay.
and they had a house at Wood Dawling,
Right.
a large house that they occupied there, and it was very kind of pious living, you know. There was no hot water and stuff like this.
Right,
This is
yeah.
how people lived. It's kind of like a commune,
Yeah.
and people looking to Islam and Sufism for inspiration. So anyway, he had then managed to establish a community in Edinburgh,
Yeah.
and now also the one in Norwich. And so this was the community I came across in Edinburgh, and they had a very clear path in Islam, you know, one that like many Muslims don't,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, even like guys from the subcontinent and that, what's happened with Islam is it's been universalized. You know, there's one Islam, but there were 4 schools of thought in the early days,
Right.
and they were recording traditions and understandings and preserving a practice, you know, and guidance, but not just practice, a whole social understanding.
Yeah.
But they wrote it down because it had gotten to the stage where there were 3 generations that had been around Muhammad, or you say the followers, or the followers of the followers.
Right.
The companions, and then who were around Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then you had the followers of the companions.
Yeah.
So kind of one stage removed,
Right.
and then you had the followers of the followers.
I see.
And so after this comes these imams, these really imams in religious schools and schools of understanding, began to record this stuff and then comment on it and stuff, and look at what was happening in their societies as well, as a kind of reference as well, and talk about what had been preserved and stuff. So it's a very good source, but a lot of people aren't encouraged to look at this early history.
Right.
And they have problems that there's 4 schools. The traditional model is you understand that like you're following a certain type of Islamic law,
Yeah.
a certain type of Islamic understanding, and therefore, so a rational person won't think, I know it all, and what I do is right, and what you do is wrong. It's like, oh, you do it that way, and you might know a bit about their school of understanding. So it's all very fascinating. the particular school he took was the imam who was still at Medina, which is where the first Muslim community flourished, was still at Medina like 3 generations later.
Right.
And he could see what was happening, and he could talk to people who were followers of the companions.
Okay.
And these people meticulously recorded stuff,
Yeah.
you know, in their minds and in their hearts, and you know, recording Quran and everything, and so he collated all this stuff, these traditions and stories, and then commented on them and showed comparative things that people said that Muhammad had done, and
Yeah.
that's the body of it. And it's actually become this kind of, then it was referenced. So then it was like, well, I heard it from him, who heard it from him, who heard it from him.
Yeah.
This man's sound, this man kind of forgot things sometimes.
Yeah.
This man, it was a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So it's not a strong link,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But do you know what? I've heard 5 other people say it as well.
Yeah.
So there's adding to that, and you got to weigh it up, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's how they referenced, and it's become like the kind of precursor to academic referencing.
I see.
You know,
yeah.
that kind of understanding. It was an early form of that, like that. They were very academic about it and diligent. So this whole traditional thing was really fascinating, and it felt so kind of wholesome and had a great integrity to it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't get this with Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't get this with Christianity. Like, nobody's talked to me about major religious kind of concepts, really. They've kind of gone with it because they're exploring it themselves.
Yeah.
And me, I'm starting to look at the historical Jesus. I'm starting to look at like books and
You wanna know
biographies
the
of
facts
Jesus
and the
from the
history behind it,
1800s,
yeah.
and Judas was a terrorist. Yeah, fair play to him. I don't blame him, you know.
Yeah.
So Jesus was a friend of a terrorist. Okay, that's totally sound.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus was a terrorist sympathizer, you know, according to the Romans. Like, well,
Yeah.
sure, who were they? And just that whole kind of trying to turn that whole picture, I was like, I'm not getting that. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. But when I see the Muslims, it's quite clearly
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. That made
And,
more sense to you. Yeah.
So I started to hang around with the Muslims there, and because it was in the war on terror context, you know, I soon met Muslims who were very much affected by it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then it was a case of, like, I went through a stage of collecting loads of newspapers and just reading obsessively about what was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and what was really happening here. But it just left me really kind of cynical and skeptical and totally faithless.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to do this to another country and I'm just supposed to watch.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't get, you know, a humanities degree and I can't step in here and have a voice, like, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'll try and do it through art then. That's how we can respond to this, you know. And so I was doing a bit of that through poetry and stuff. But when I became a Muslim, then it was very much about the practice, and you're not just reading about people, you're talking to people who've been affected.
Yeah.
So, for example, this keffiyeh I got from a guy who's now a doctor in Bradford, and he was up in Edinburgh, and he has a relative who was sent to prison for 180 years in America. And he was sent there because they say he blew up the World Trade Center in 1993.
Right.
That he was driving a Ryder rental truck,
Mm-hmm.
and then he drove it into the basement and left it beside a pillar and blew it up.
Right.
So I'm like, whoa, okay. And then he starts coming with documentation
Yeah.
around the case, and like the book that his lawyer produced to point out why he was innocent,
Yeah.
and the mysteries around the case that were definitely in the public domain.
Yeah.
That there was a guy who was definitely an FBI agent who was injured in the blast,
Right.
but nobody talked to him. And he had actually been infiltrating Muslim groups. This was in, where was he? I can't remember where he was in America, actually. I think he was on the West Coast, but this FBI agent had been infiltrating Muslim groups and had basically made loads of recordings. So his lawyer was saying that at the trial of this man, Mohammed al-Salameh, these recordings had to be, they were suppressed during his trial, but then something else came up 2 years later in which they had to be disclosed.
Right.
Because of the way the evidence worked kind of retrospectively.
Yeah.
And they had to be disclosed. And the one of the legal representatives for Mohammed al-Salameh listened to those tapes, and he was like, this guy admits to planting an explosive in 1993 attack.
Right.
And it's all there. Like, he's talking to
admitted
people
it,
and
yeah.
talking about, like, so Mohammed what was it? There was just talk about, like, yeah, but this isn't going to be a real bomb and stuff like this. And he was trying it on with different Muslims and stuff. And he'd quite plainly done it.
Yeah.
And that really...
So they didn't use that to try and appeal the guy. He's still in jail.
No, because what happened was they were disclosed, but they weren't, like, played in court or anything.
Right.
So they weren't played to the judge. They weren't played to the jury. They were disclosed, and then they were kind of put on the record. So that meant that the legal team could access them if they wanted
Right.
to, or they were more publicly accessible to legal professionals. So then, when they took the time to actually go through them, then all his complicity in that bombing then came out, and other things as well. And it just becomes, like, it's all very, very believable.
Yeah.
You know, definitely very, like, it's true.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, when the 9/11 happened, whatever happened, the sales of the Quran and just went through the roof, didn't they? A lot of people
Yeah.
was intrigued and by Islam and stuff like that, and I think a lot of that
Yeah.
curiosity and stuff did turn a lot of people to Islam, didn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of Christians converted, like yourself, to Islam kind of around that time, isn't it? So if the goal was to destroy Islam in whatever way, actually done the opposite, because it, like,
Yeah.
you know, it put Islam on a thing where people started looking at it, you know?
But even in Islam now, I can't remember exactly the quote or the reference, but in I don't know if it's in the Quran or in, like, a kind of telling, but there is that thing of, like, Allah will bring people to Islam through his enemies,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And then you see that kind of stuff, and you just think,
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah.
That's
I hear
what's
that.
happening. Like, that's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. Well, I used to. You said that you've been learning Arabic,
Yeah.
and I know that that's one of the main things about turning to Muslim. You need to be able to read the Quran in its
Yeah.
in its purest form, which is to read it in Arabic, because
Yeah.
it's like a poem, isn't it? It's sort
Yeah.
of what's the part of the Quran where it's like it sounds like they're singing
All of it.
all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, like, walking around exercise yard and stuff, and you'd
Yeah.
have a bunch of guys there, and it would, do you know what I mean? The frequency of it would sound nice. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Like, and, like, you know, you get people who go on spiritual retreats and stuff and just sit there and chant. And I don't mean just sit there and chant, but what to me now, from my perspective, is what's going on is that it's people trying to tap into that old, you know, it's something that needs to be present, but it's something that comes from such an old place.
Are you on
Just
about the
being there,
spiritual side of it?
resonating, yeah, the spirit.
Yeah.
So, but when you come together and recite Quran, you get that.
Yeah.
But you're reading this script, and you can look at the translation, you can listen to the rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's not just a simple kind of a simple resonation.
Yeah.
It's like got a drive. Like, I've done circles in Morocco
Yeah.
early in the morning, you know, and it was like dynamite.
Mhm.
The pace they went through it, like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, there's a lovely rhythm. Do you want to hear some?
Yeah. Why not? Let's go for it.
I'll do the Fatiha, which is the opening, which is that's the main thing that you would need to know to do your prayers.
Right. So this is what you do before you pray.
No, this is what you do in a prayer,
Right, okay.
and then for each kind of cycle of prayer. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
There it is. Feel the power, feel the energy. Do you know what I mean? Did I hear the word shaitan?
At the start,
Yeah.
you say that before reciting the Quran.
Is that the devil?
Yeah, shaitan.
The
yeah.
one-eyed devil?
No, that's the false messiah. Is
The
the one
Cyclops,
the Dajjal.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
So, how do you say it?
shaitan.
And that's Satan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you straight away at the start you let it be known that you're not messing with him.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, seek refuge from shaitan.
Who was that guy, Salman Rushdie? What was his beef with Muslims? Didn't he write a book, The Satanic?
Satanic verses.
Yeah. What was it? Because was he saying that? What was his whole thing? Do you know?
It's pretty.
He said, was there a part of the Quran that he said that? I don't know. Was saying that?
It was nothing he said specifically. It was that he how he wrote. I don't know. I never read the book, but it was what he wrote was like kind of allegorical. He had names that related to Muslim companions, and there was an Aisha in that.
Uh-huh.
And I gather she was quite desecrated in the book.
Yeah.
And it was it certainly touched a nerve, but where it touched a nerve most was in the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah.
And so the context of the kind of book burnings as well is that you had this. He subsequently had a fatwa against him.
Right.
So they put out a fatwa to say that he could be assassinated. So the stuff that he wrote was apparently quite disgusting and was fairly blatant, kind of denigrating people precious to Muslims, precious in Muslim history. So the Islamic Republic in Iran, having just thrown off the Mossadegh and basically creating this Islamic Republic, were more than geared up to say, yeah, that's gonna go.
Yeah.
And so there was book burnings in Tehran and that. So then he was lauded as like a free speech kind of advocate.
Right. Yeah, same as a lot of books in jail. Do you know what I mean? I'd have good intentions. All these books that I'd heard of, I'd have piles of books. You just couldn't work your way through them all. So that was, I remember hearing about that book and do you know what I mean? Reading the Quran at the time as well. So thinking, but I just never got around to reading it.
I don't think you missed much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I mean, a lot of the things going on in the world are obviously interlinked and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot going on at home for us in England right now, which is linked with other things. So yeah, what do you think of the kind of current feeling in the air regarding migrants, immigrants, illegal immigrants, the borders, the way in which all of this is then, stuff comes to the surface. You see a lot of racism coming out, a lot of prejudices, a lot of intolerance, a lot of stuff that we haven't really seen in. It's always been there, don't get me wrong, but a lot of stuff that reminds me of like when I was younger, sort of 80s and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? a lot of that sort of rearing its head up. What do you think about, the current state of what's happening?
Lots of things, really. But I will say, like, I mean, I kind of frame it as a clash between the national economy and what you call the moral economy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an academic who wrote a book about English national identity, and he makes the point, which I think is very true. It really kind of stands true. He makes a point that there was no institution that really gathered English people as much as money. The king had an extent of influence, but like through the ages, they didn't have that, like they weren't tapping into everybody in the nation kind of thing. Sure, he was a public figure, but he didn't. It's like 40% of people voted in the last election.
Yeah.
So the association there, it's like, does the government represent the English people? You have to think of it like that. So in terms of national identity, he says that, like kind of practically speaking, the only institution that pretty much all of English people have become engaged in is money.
Yeah.
The finance. So I think of it like this, that like how much money has affected the society, and then what it is that that some of these people are working class. So I say that in inverted commas because I don't know how they're working, and some of them might be unemployed, but also like that kind of term has to be really kind of reflected on when it comes to like kind of working for who, working for what. And I know, because I'm working class. I'm now working in Norwich Castle doing carpentry. I have spent last 2.5 years on the 0-hour gig economy.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's kept me going through that is, aspirations, artistic projects, goals, having that kind of stuff outside of work, audiobooks. I was just learning so much while I was doing menial kind of jobs, like, or they could see I'm semi-skilled, so I get onto something a bit more advanced, and it's like, right, just let me listen to a book and get on with this. But I've been working class, like, and I've been on that 0-hour gig economy, and so I know that, like, when it comes to the economy, I'm more concerned, and I've argued this with total bigots on building sites. What I've really tried to do is get them down to the point where, is this an economic thing or a racial thing? Is this an economic thing or a cultural thing?
Yeah.
Because they know that they need to frame it as an economic thing. Because if it's overtly racist, they'll just be dismissed.
Yeah.
Most people know that, you know. So, but the zeroing in on migrants, and then the effect that's had on the population in the kind of minority groups in England who've been here for a generation or more, it kind of unfolds. And so you've got people who've been not told when it comes to the public purse.
Yeah.
COVID contracts, the billions that went out the door. So tax havens.
Yeah.
They're not thinking Britain's biggest export is financial services. So that's like financial services and wealth managers are a class of people whose kind of motto is only the poor pay taxes. It's that kind of thing. Like.
Yeah.
And shuffling around wealth.
Yeah.
So there's a woman so imagine there's like a woman in the House of Lords now, Melissa Moan, and she ran a lingerie company before COVID. Somehow, because of her husband, she ends up landing a 200 million contract for supplying dodgy PPE during COVID.
Right.
2/5 of that, about 80 million, went to her and her husband
Right.
as a finder's fee.
Mm-hmm.
80 million.
Yeah. Wow.
Right, that's coming out of the public purse.
Yeah.
Sorry, what are we getting for our money?
Yeah.
What are we getting for our money here? And then it went through 5 different bank accounts
Yeah.
and then into a trust fund in her name. Some of it went to her husband. 15, I think 10. He got his little,
A
thing,
little
like,
drink, yeah.
And then she buried it in a trust fund, like.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of world we're working in. And that's like when I pay my taxes, then, like, what's happening with that money? And we're not like we're not majorly manufacturing economy anymore.
Yeah.
We're a service economy. And at the top of that is this financial services. That's telling rich people how they can manage their money so they don't have to pay it out.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Labour has just unveiled there's a 22 billion black hole.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we just stepped across this void in the national economy.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like they're talking about further austerity and all this kind of stuff. While those Labour people and the Corbynites have come up with proposals of how this could be much better run.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what really gets me, is that these people are kind of trained to target and zero in on people that they deem illegal, firstly,
Yeah.
which is erroneous.
Mm-hmm.
But also the argument is then about like the money they're getting.
Yeah.
You know, the money that's being spent in these hotels.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, do you think that's going to them?
Mm-hmm.
Like they get a meal, they get like, it's something like £3 a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's something minor, and there's restrictions. You know, don't get me wrong. If they've come from a war zone, which most of them have, then it's some relief.
Yeah.
But what they want to be doing, and I know from talking to refugees, talking to people who facilitate and help refugees in those hotels, they just want to be at work and improve themselves.
Yeah.
Like Sudan. I'm going on a bit of a rant now, but the ignorance around how other countries work in this country is just repugnant. Like, and it's not so much like, you know, it's the stuff that circulates, that goes around the mainstream.
Yeah.
That's the mainstream. The scum rises to the top. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's the filth that we just get shown day by day. And so, you know, like I've talked to a Sudanese woman here who she was just telling me that, like, on Sudan, you know, if you tell somebody you're a teacher, they just go, so what? Anybody could be a teacher. Are you a doctor? Are you an engineer?
Yeah.
Are you something of interest?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the level, like,
Yeah.
professionalism. That's was her experience. A Sudanese guy I know who had a gun held to his head a few times and got locked up and all this for organising protests in a university, came over here and he's just graduated from King's College London in genetics, while developing a kind of an Uber app for security guards.
Right.
So he's floating that now. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like what he's doing is he's working with a software development team,
Yeah.
and he's putting out this security app and trying to market that. And then he'll continue with his,
Yeah.
you know, doctorate and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like he's embracing the moment, and then, you know, medical profession is on the back burner.
Yeah.
That's the level he's at, like.
Okay.
You know, and so most Sudanese, for example, find it offensive to be getting money without nothing.
Yeah.
You know, they have to do something.
I think a lot of people, what I could see recently is people didn't actually know where to aim their anger, what they were angry about. It's all of a sudden, it's like, everyone's angry, but I'm angry as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it was like, because you actually pinpoint the things that people are saying on social media. All right, so you're not happy with this. You know what I mean? Like you say.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
giving money to immigrants in hotels, but you're not kicking off about, what's her name?
Yeah.
Moan.
Michelle Mon.
Michelle
And
Mon.
the fact is,
And the
like,
people who are actually like robbing you blind.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, hold on, let's break it down and like the immigrants aren't getting much money. So if you're worried about that,
Yeah.
bro, if you want to open this door,
So, I mean,
this is what they're doing in house.
I guess a lot of it came to a head because people, I don't know, you had obviously Tommy Robinson
Yeah,
is a big influencer. He's a big voice in our country. A lot of people,
he's a loud voice.
yeah, definitely influential, as you know, and yeah, he does look so angry. His head's gonna pop off his head sometimes, don't it? You know, but does he have any valid points?
No, he's poisoned. He's poisoned the whole atmosphere. How he insisted on, like, whatever went on in Rochdale, the grooming gangs, it just sounds absolutely, like, gruesome and barbaric, like. And how he wanted those people to be identified as Muslims. You have to kind of think, as a Muslim, like, it just, well, it doesn't add up, right? Because he'll say, "Oh, Islam is a religion; it's not a race."
Mm-hmm.
And I've said it on his Facebook page. I said, so like these guys plied the girls with drink, drugs, and then had group sex with them.
Yeah,
Right. So alcohol is forbidden in Islam. And drugs is definitely out.
yeah,
And you can't have sex with somebody who's not your wife.
uh-huh,
So what did these guys do that was Islamic?
yeah,
That was my basic question. What did these
Yeah.
guys do? And because what he's doing is he's skirting around it by saying, "Oh yeah, but they're Muslims. It's not about their race. It's about their religion." But then it's like, well, but if you're going to say they're following a religion, then they've got to have done something. It's an active thing. Like,
Yeah.
the only reason you're saying they're Muslim is because they have an Urdu name or an Arabic name, and they're from Pakistan, or that's the only thing that to you satisfies the criteria of being a Muslim.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's just like he's keeping it at that level where then people think, well, that's what Muslims do. When the reality is, those guys would probably have been executed under Sharia law, which is what these guys are probably calling for, hopefully calling for. Like, if people are going to do monstrous things like that, then
yeah.
but
Just
not
just
even
explain like explain the thing around like Muhammad, because a lot of people say, Muhammad's wife was a kid and all these sort of things,
Yeah.
and so people who don't really know much about that, like, do you know what I mean? Obviously, the laws were different, but and then
the society that, yeah, I mean, that's not a get out. It's kind of, because it taps into pedophilia, taps into like a core part of us that is like, well, obviously not everybody, but it taps into that kind of abuse, and the results that have come from it. Like, it taps into that. It automatically arouses hate. And like anger and disgust. So, but like what happened in the time is that Muhammad, peace be upon him, he had 10 wives in his life, and some of them were like war widows. And marriage was, as it's been through history, is it's a social arrangement. It's not just about sex. His first wife was older than him, very successful merchant, but one of his wives, it was one of the wealthiest kind of nobles who sided with the Muslims at the time, bequeathed his daughter. So standard kind of fare throughout history. In the institution of marriage, older, like fathers promising their daughters, and sometimes as young as that. Like during the Crusades, a French crusader married a 4-year-old, in Jerusalem. So what imaginings are we going to conjure from that situation,
Yeah.
Tommy? Like, he's not going to go there. It's all about this. the thing is, he cares more about the abuser than the abused.
Yeah.
He cares, was it a Muslim? Right, well, let's pick up on this story. And but what happened, you know, a genuine thing, and it's a very difficult thing to talk about, but Muhammad was promised Aisha, who was about 9 years old.
Yeah.
So she didn't live with him directly after those years, but then she came to puberty, probably a few years later.
Yeah.
And when Muhammad was told, he then consummated the marriage.
Yeah.
So he did have sex with her. So that happened, and then she was one of his wives and went into battle with him. She was then regarded as mother of the believers. And in terms of narrating stories, even her slaves were looked to for guidance by Muslims.
Right.
You know, she had slaves then as well. Even her slaves were looked to for guidance. Yeah, well, you know, you guys were around Muhammad, peace be upon him, like, give us some insight. And she was a constant reference for people.
Yeah.
And not just in terms of how Muhammad was, but in terms of the deen and the spirituality.
Yeah.
You know, and she was then accused of committing adultery because she basically went off with somebody when they were out to make a raid or a caravan journey, and she ended up going off with somebody on her own, and Muslims were speculating that she was committing adultery, and then a verse in the Quran was revealed that absolved her and the man. And she stood by his side and was a very prominent figure in history. And so it's like, yes, he did have sex, but we're talking about a time where there was no kind of age of consent. There was marriage as an institution. The hate and the anger and the kind of repulsion about paedophilia is about, like, somebody could be really abused in this relationship. And a difficult thing, right? So there was an article in The Guardian going back about 7-8 years. And what they said was that the 5 top organizations in looking at child abuse said that where there was consent, there was no tangible harm.
Right.
And that was like, whoa, we can't go there because it just seems to open a door for abuse.
Yeah.
Whether it's a sociological fact or not.
Yeah.
We have to establish boundaries back here when it comes to child abuse.
Yeah.
You know, we can't get into that because then that feeds the paedophiles' arguments. You know.
Yeah.
And so the conflation of what happened to Aisha and like, let's say it's a historical case.
Yeah.
And do we know of any harm that came from it? I don't mean that like kind of heartlessly. You know, I'm concerned for the girl, you know, but she appears to have prospered. She appears to have been very healthy. She appears to have been very well looked after in the society. So that's how it was. To compare that situation, organized, you know, between successful people in a highly revolutionary time.
Yeah.
To compare that to like Gary Glitter or, you know,
Jimmy Savile.
Yeah. To like try and frame it like that. And then to associate this grooming gangs with that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And then to even say like, yeah, because Muhammad did this and all Muslims want to emulate Muhammad,
Yeah.
then they're going to be inclined to think
Because that is what some people think, do you know what I mean?
But what?
You see it written in posts and comments and Muslims, you know, they
wanna do-
their main guy was a fucking, you know.
Yeah.
So of course the rest of them are. This is how they think. Do you know what I mean?
And this is it. You can't communicate. When those people went on those protests, and all you could hear them saying was, astaghfirullah, but Allah is a pedo. Mm-hmm. It's like, I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
I can shout,
Yeah.
and if you want to go there, I'll fight.
Yeah.
But I can't talk to you the way you're communicating. Like,
Yeah.
it's like if that's your tagline,
Yeah.
you know, if you would walk about with placards that said that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, what the fuck are you? Like,
So them mad Christians. Remember them Christians? There was a family in America, and they had. Can you remember?
oh yeah, but gays, was it?
Well, I'd have fucking Britney Spears. Like
Yeah.
they'd have all random names. Like they'd be going at gays and homosexuals,
Yeah.
but they'd have all random celebrities. Britney Spears is the devil. Christina Aguilera, Madonna is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
these.
No, it's a moral panic. Like,
Yeah.
it just creates a moral panic, and then they
So I saw the other day, someone got sent to jail for 11 months. He's one of the guys who, one of the pedo hunters. Funnily enough,
yeah, right, yeah.
we talked about. it the
I'd
other day.
seen
But
stuff,
he got
yeah.
11 months. I can't remember exactly what he said. Something ridiculous is what it was. Something like he was saying something like Alan's snack bar.
Yeah, instead of Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, and he got sent to jail for 11 months.
Yeah, but couldn't have been just for that.
Maybe
He
there's
must
more
have
to it.
associated with. Did he not associate it with paedophilia or something?
From what I read, no, but maybe there's more into it. But should people go to jail for saying things against any religion? Do you think?
I think it's kind of. It's ignorant to fight for the right to mock something. That is not again, that's a non-starter.
Yeah.
So you want to denigrate something that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
You want the right to that, like free speech
Because
is.
that's not achieving nothing for no one.
Why
is
would
it?
I give you that?
Yeah.
The only person who would want absolute free speech is a dictator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say what I want, and you lot, because then they moan about what's said back to them.
Yeah.
God, you can't say anything these days. Only talked about how I used to go out gay bashing,
Yeah.
and then this guy's on to me like, you can't say anything. It's like,
Yeah.
well, no, you said that, and then he
Not
said
everyone
that.
likes
Like,
to go packy bashing anymore.
surely you'd fight for his right to say that as well, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that where you're coming from?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, how am I supposed
Yeah,
to
no, I
respect
see.
you when it's
Yeah.
all self-centered?
I get it.
You know, and it's deluded. But
Because you wouldn't want. You wouldn't want to live in like a. Do you know what I mean? The Chinas, the North Koreas, where you literally can't say nothing. Even like politicians just go missing, don't they? Do you know what I mean? In China, it's common. You know, someone
Yeah.
says something and they're never seen again, are they?
you know, I mean, there's a lot to be, there's a war of ideas, you know, there's a war of ideas. So, but, you know, free speech in this country was originally a parliamentary thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was to give Parliament the freedom to talk about social issues and not have to worry about being kind of challenged by the king and, you know, even killed by the king if it was deemed, or queen, if it was deemed treasonous, or they didn't want to be hemmed in by the parameters of royalty.
Yeah.
They want to be able to talk about a social situation, talk about governance, talk about that kind of thing,
Yeah.
without suffering from the powers that be.
Uh-huh.
That's not what's being like kind of understood right now.
Yeah.
You've got people who just think, I have the right to say anything, and it's like, certainly there's limits to free speech. For me, it's just an understanding like that. So often these hate speech incidences happen between strangers because it's like a dysfunctional thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like if I have a friend and he's saying certain things that I don't like, I'll talk to him about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or else we'll have an argument and a falling out, like, you know. But people see it as like somehow they're being held back in society because they're not being allowed to say stuff like that. They're not being allowed to go down and say like, you know, all Muslims are pedos or whatever. Like,
Yeah. So, what do you think? Or do you think anything's possible? Do you think England could ever be under Sharia law?
only like
Which is obviously something that a lot of PC things written. Oh, this is going to happen, you know, and we'll be taken over soon. And You know, is
Yeah,
that,
but then there's leaflets going around saying, "Oh, in 50 years, England, white will be a minority," and good, good,
Yeah.
can't wait,
yeah,
cannot wait, and then we can get over our fucking
yeah,
selves.
diversity.
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Diversity in different cultures is what makes us human, and that's the beauty of being human. Do you know what I mean?
Totally, totally.
And then you got, there's the picture of the guy with the swastika tattoo, with the poppy.
All right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like really confusing ideas that people must have. Do you know what I mean?
What was that? I didn't...
In one of the riots, and this guy went viral because everyone's posting.
Oh,
this,
yeah.
This guy literally, you've got a swastika tattoo and a poppy. Which one are you fighting for?
Yeah.
So, are we Nazis?
Or is it just all out war?
We hate Jews. We're Nazis, or do we?
Yeah, I mean, he's bound to be an anti-Semite because, like, people around Balfour's time, when they set up the state of Israel, they were just like, Israel was a solution. Yeah, grand. We don't have to kill them. We can just get rid of them.
Yeah, quite clearly, when there's like unrest and then there's kicking off in the country and then Luton, Shoe Zone and Greg's, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's got
it,
nothing
yeah.
to do with you not being happy about the
Or burning the
borders or
library,
migrants, you know what I mean? That's just I was in jail when the London riots happened, and similar time to now, the prisons reached blowing point. Do you know what I mean? There was just loads of people coming in, and Mark Duggan got killed, and then all of a sudden everyone's just ransacking. He obviously shouldn't have been killed. He didn't have a gun. That was all bullshit from the police. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then people used it as a, let's burn our fucking neighbourhoods, and
It's like
a lot of local people got affected by that. The same people that we're kicking off because we're happy that one of our locals has been killed.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go and smash our local shops up.
Yeah. And no doubt, like, there's an anger there. And, like, once you create that wave, because I gather, like, the London riots, well, before they became riots, they began as a kind of protest, a more direct protest about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but got overtaken with anger. But then there's lots of people who said they could see those riots coming.
Yeah.
And they had been warning about it. So there's, like, the poverty in this country at the moment, and the disparity between the rich and the poor, the fact that now apparently like 95% of the budget is being spent on national debt, 90% of GDP. So the kind of money we're producing, that gross, 95% of it is being spent on national debt. We owe it.
Mm-hmm.
And
we
then,
owe it to who?
well, it's lenders, money lenders.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the World Bank. I haven't broken it down in that sense.
Yeah.
I think the IMF have been involved in Britain's economic recent history.
I always used to think something really stupid to myself. Why don't we just print more money and pretend we've got more money?
Well, that's what sometimes the bankers think, but it does bounce back at some stage,
right.
because because people who are you're tapping into like something that is the kind of the nature of the money system, and it goes back to what I was saying about the national economy, because the birth of this kind of fiat currency, which was seemingly like banks stored gold, and then they gave people a note to say, right, I've got your gold. If you ever want it back, come back.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I've been sitting here 2 years and I've got all this gold. Like, people just want to leave it with me.
Yeah.
But I know somebody who's looking for £10, like, so I'll draw up another note.
Yeah.
Slip that out the door. And they basically took a gamble,
Mm-hmm.
and said,
So they were putting out more money than what they actually had of gold.
They basically say, well, 1 out of 10 people
Yeah.
is going to come back within a certain time to
Yeah.
claim their gold. So, and there is a name for it that is like a 10 times thing, where they basically took it as that, like, we'll make 1,000% the notes
Yeah.
and put them in circulation.
Yeah.
Like fed in, like over kind of phases. But people began just spending the notes, and that was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
So I gather, like China had an ancient print money, but here, during Georgian times, when like people did a lot more kind of, especially around Norfolk, they did a lot more subsistence farming as a community. Like it was a totally communal activity.
Yeah.
Interlocked relationships.
Yeah.
And money didn't so much come into people's lives because it was kind of like you knew people who were growing your food.
Yeah.
You knew people who were making your clothes.
Yeah.
You'd come to some social arrangement, you know, that didn't involve money.
Yeah.
And not a lot of food really went to market.
Yeah.
But then Georgian times came in and industrialization came on the back of banks as people consolidated their wealth.
Yeah.
So basically, a lot of regional banks built up and spread throughout the country. And then people suddenly had a lot of money on their
Yeah.
plate. And then the proceeds from slavery were kind of still coming in.
Yeah.
And then people started doing grander industrial projects.
Yeah.
But then that tore apart communities and dug into the agricultural communities.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of resistance. And this is where the moral economy comes from. It's the kind of the power of the crowd.
Yeah.
And you have all these kind of cultural, like, people used to go around in ladies' dresses. And men, you know, would go around in ladies' dresses and
Right.
blacked up faces.
Right.
And fighting against the, you know, kind of out to get their, like, landlord.
Yeah.
Or somebody who had held back the poor rate for unjust
Right.
reasons.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
somebody who's holding back bread in times of, or trying to, what you call it, when you store loads
Hoard.
of, you hoarding loads of stuff so you can up the price.
Yeah.
So all these kind of practices were going on, and this is what is known as the moral economy. People didn't rise up and move as a social movement for money. They moved. Economy is like that kind of world system,
Yeah.
like a certain world that a certain amount of people are in, and they moved to that.
Yeah.
And so there was agricultural protest. All of
Is this
this
like-
Luddites smashing up in
Is
industrial
this
machines.
like with like this thing that happened in Norfolk with like the Kett brothers and stuff? Is that the same story?
Yeah, so that was against enclosure.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. So you had landlords. Again, Parliament was made up mostly of landowners.
Yeah.
So then they passed enclosure acts and then sealed off large tracts of land then. And so the common land got reduced and reduced and reduced.
Yeah.
And now 5% of England is common land. 5%. The rest,
Crazy.
you're walking on somebody else's property.
It's crazy.
And just how many people that is, like, I don't know. Like, I gather it's about 100 people.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of pyramid
Yeah.
thing, and that spreads out. But it's people who kind of, for me, it's like people who kind of fight for that economic system, or whose grievances are because they're not getting, they're not getting their bit of that economic system.
Yeah.
They're like these far right guys. It's either going to be a racist argument,
Yeah.
or it's going to be a really shitty crap economic one.
Yeah.
You know, but beyond that, what's the culture? Like, they're waving a Georgia's flag. That's a national thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like it's something that's been put in by the powers that be. It's something that's been instituted. You know, you're arguing for the institutions. You're not arguing against the institutions.
Yeah.
You're arguing against people on the, on the fringes of those institutions. You're shaming poor people. You're moralizing over poor people's behavior, like, and saying that's not us.
Yeah.
You know, that's what the whole British values thing was about. It wasn't about, like, why the hell would a government tell a people what its values are? We either hold them or we don't.
Yeah.
Don't try and legislate this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It took me a couple of years to realize that it wasn't about, like, some kind of sense of trying to build a sense of nation on values, because most people just saw through it. Rule of law was one,
Yeah.
and sure, England was involved in the illegal invasion of Afghanistan. Still in Afghanistan and still in Iraq.
Yeah.
You just were kind of like, yeah, is it really a value? Rule of law? Do you really believe it? Like,
Yeah. There was quite clearly something to gain from going to these countries, weren't there?
yeah. But institution And then rolling out British values in the education system, it is trying to impress a national identity. But the real way that it's been weaponized then is to then say, you don't understand British values.
Yeah.
And yet the idea that British people understand British values, like as a whole, is kind of ridiculous.
I think that some English people will look back at Britain's history and that'll make them proud.
Yeah.
All the, crusades, all the pillaging, all the everything that got stolen from all these, everything that we was involved in, the British.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes us strong. We ruled the world, Britannia rules the world, and we took over everything. And then you've kind of got like the last couple of generations where it's like there's almost like a little bit of guilt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like, what we done weren't actually right. We shouldn't celebrate. It's history. You can't do nothing about it. And we have obviously, whether we like it or not, reaped the rewards of what our ancestors done.
Yep.
But it's also, right to say that the things that were done were not right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why you see, you're seeing a lot of these slave owner statues getting took down and things like that.
Well, not a lot. I think only been one or two.
Yeah, I know there was one in. Well, so they took the ones down in Norwich, didn't they?
No, Nelson and that.
Yeah.
No, that got spray painted.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So, okay. So they took one down. I remember there was one in Bristol, weren't there?
Yeah.
Thingy.
Ed, what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. But yeah. But like, this is the thing. You'd be led to believe that because it's a constant moan. History is written by those in power. This is a quote from Frank Hart, Irish balladeer.
Mm-hmm.
History is written by those in power.
Mm-hmm.
Those who suffer sing the songs.
Yeah.
And when I was working with these bigots in building site, one of them literally said, "The refugees, I shoot them all." I say,
Yeah.
Just like, what did you say? We're gonna have a conversation. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not hearing that. I'm not responding. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't care if you tell me to get off the site, basically. And I'd argue with them loads. And but one of the guys goes, the foreman there, he goes, England's gone. And I said, which England? Which, like the proud, like the imperial one that went out to off?
Yeah. What's gone? Yeah. What have we? Yeah.
Conquered this and conquered that, or the people who protested against enclosure of land and sung the songs and developed some rituals and planted food.
Mm-hmm.
What England is gone?
Yeah.
And it kind of baffled him. But it's this kind of superficial notion of nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
You can have many nationalisms. People talk in this country about black nationalisms because black is such a white. It's such a kind of all-encompassing, obscure notion.
White man from where? Ukraine or Canada?
Like it means kind of nothing in itself, but it's got a legacy.
Yeah.
And if you don't dip into that legacy, then you won't understand what it means when you say those words.
Yeah.
And so, but nationalisms, like, used to be that nation was people, natus, what you're born to, the people you're born to, literally. And then now it's become nation statehood. But again, on the back of nation statehood is banks.
Mm-hmm. Nation
states didn't really operate like they do now before banking. So it's kind of like when it comes to nationalists, they seem to be just kind of going with the institutional talk and having their totally misdirected economic concerns.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it looks like a moral economy.
Yeah.
It looks like a protest. But it's actually, the reason we're saying the reason people say they're fascist is because behind it people think you're all about the state. And fascism relies on racism.
Yeah.
It relies on a hierarchy. And so it kind of looks like a moral economy, but the cause is more about a kind of nationalism based on the national economy, as I see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's the driving force. Like, you know, you can opt out of elections. You can totally ignore the king, but try getting by without a bit of money.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what you'll end up in poverty.
Yeah.
You'll end up in those statistics, and that people will just look past because we've just got to get on with things.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's driving us forward into this kind of, we're going cashless now.
Yeah.
Now what's money?
Yeah, just a number in a machine.
Who's pushing the
Where
buttons
is the
then?
money?
Do you know what I mean?
Where the fuck's all the gold, for one? I know I've got half of it round my neck, but where is actually all the big lumps of gold? Do you know what I mean?
And it goes back to the thing about Jesus. You know, you buy into a money system and you pay the price. You
Yeah.
actually pay the price.
It's quite clear where all the gold's gone. The aliens have used it as fuel for their spaceships.
I think they're building pyramids with it,
We've
aren't
been
they?
harvesting the gold for our ancient alien ancestors. That's what's happened there.
They've got a copy of Giza on Neptune, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, no, there's a lot. Just with the boats coming over.
Yeah.
I don't really know like too much of the system. I guess they get put in hotels or whatever, or these centres or whatever, and then they get
Processed. Eventually.
So what do you think about like the borders and stuff like that? Is that a concern? What do you think? Is there like too many people? Is there too many aliens, whatever you want to call people, that we don't know who they are, where they've come from, and should we be concerned about that?
Well, I mean, you know, I think it was quantified as about $1 trillion of African mineral resources is traded on the London Stock Exchange. So, you know, you start with the small boats, but in the context of a country that operates like this at a financial level, and its manipulation in other countries, its involvement in other countries like this, and in people's livelihoods, you know, this cuts into other people's economies. So in that kind of a context, it's like, well, the global population is growing, and you know, this country has been involved in illegal invasions, and so to start thinking like, no, refugees, no, you know, that's a totally immoral stance to take. To like be an arms trader,
Yeah.
and then not account for the possibility of refugees.
Yeah.
So, but some of it, some of the problem goes back to the times of Gaddafi. Gaddafi made it publicly known that should Libya fall, there would be an influx of refugees into Europe. Part of it was basically seen as a threat.
Yeah.
He would just send them, you know, he would make sure that happened, kind of thing. But part of it was real, that like, you know, a natural kind of cause of Libya becoming a failed state would be a kind of breakdown of the kind of refugee system. To call it human trafficking is because people migrate over incredible distances. I know a Sudanese guy who clung to the bottom of a truck for 3 days, you know, and make these journeys to get out of the situation. So like being involved, being a member of NATO, and I'm not sure how, like Britain wasn't involved in getting Gaddafi apparently, but they were sharing intelligence.
Yeah.
They were involved in that situation. So, and a lot of the refugees are coming from Afghanistan, coming from Iraq, Somalia as well, which Britain has had involved.
Didn't they put a gun up his bum? What
No.
happened there?
So what happened was, it was a French Mirage. Gaddafi was driving in a car in a convoy, and a French Mirage jet, a NATO French Mirage jet, popped his car, hit it with a missile, and it went off the road. And then these jihadis, who seem to like attacking Muslims only, they got him, and the first guy, one of the
Buggered
first
him,
guys,
yeah.
buggered him with a
Right.
stick. Yeah,
Crazy.
that's how they got him, and I think he died very shortly after.
Yeah.
the wound.
I just think about, imagine if how we saw him die on telly, watching it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Live, the same as Saddam, watching him like about to be hung.
Hung in a basement, yeah.
Imagine watching that happen to Tony Blair.
Yeah. Oh, I have.
Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't.
It would blow
happen.
your mind. It would blow
Yeah,
your mind.
because that's not allowed to happen to us because we're the
story doesn't go
we're
that
the
way.
good people.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? But I mean, Tony Blair,
And you can feel yourself. It's like,
you know,
yeah, we go back to sleep and think we're the good guys. Yeah.
the partnership
that's the
of
story. That's
the
the story we
partnership
bought into.
of George Bush and Tony Blair. That's that was made in hell. Do you know what I mean? It was horrific what they done. However many murders they were responsible for, I can't even imagine. Do you know
Yeah,
what
I mean, there's people arguing for Tony Blair to be done for war crimes. Like there's people now out to get Netanyahu for war crimes.
Is that going to happen though? Because what's happening in Israel, like they're kind of a law to their own, and for some reason they hold so much power in the world, don't they? Where
A lot of influence, but I always see it like it's not like it's a triumvirate. It's three groups at once, like US, UK, and Israel. Other countries involved as well, but kind of historically, it's been that what Chomsky called a fateful triangle.
yeah,
But it's a joint venture, But Israel has an incredible amount of influence. Yeah.
I mean, low key put out a video recently talking about Tommy Robinson, sharing some documents, basically saying that Tommy Robinson was paid by this guy who
Yeah.
was Israeli Defence League or whatever. So
Yeah.
Tommy Robinson was getting paid £10,000 a month for a number by this guy. Do you know what I mean? So being
That's-
sponsored by a guy from Israel. So isn't that weird how that kind of links in what's happening in our country and it's all interlinked?
Yeah, the kind of Zionist thing is built on Islamophobia, and so to have Britain and America on board with that, then they towed the line with, not towing the line. They as much feed it out as Israel does, but Israel is presented as being on the front line of a war between the West and Islam.
Yeah.
So it's drawing on all the Judeo-Christian values
Yeah.
that are seemingly, in Europe and America, yeah, I mean, the Islamophobia, it's all kind of related, and it'd be fair enough to call Tommy Robinson a Zionist as well. Like he said stuff about he'd fight for Israel, and recently he was off his head, but he said like in the war like that's happening now, like Israel's bombardment, I don't want to call it a war, but Israel's bombardment of Gaza, he said he'd fight for Israel. And then he's pictured on Abrams tank,
Yeah.
photographs and all this kind of stuff in the photo ops. And then what Loki said as well was English Defence League were first registered as English and Jewish Defence League.
Yeah.
Like English Defence League as a name has a history. It was around like kind of the 70s and 80s, and then, but it also had a earlier history in the 30s.
Right.
And the same kind of thing, this kind of national pride that was just bludgeoned into people, just foisted on people, like, and people just went with it. But the Jewish Defence League was set up by a guy called Meir Kahane, and he was assassinated. In fact, it was his case that led to the disclosure of those tapes.
Right. Okay.
That the FBI agent
Yeah.
did. So, but he was assassinated. He was deemed a terrorist. Him and his organization were deemed a terrorist organization by the US, and they were. He wrote a book about about how the Palestinians need to leave. In like late 70s. But he was absolute. His aggressive nationalism around Israel just totally sums up what Zionism is about. And the national security minister now in Israel has a picture of him up in his room. It's Meir Kahane,
Right.
and he's in an interview, like, and the guy says, "What if your kids see that? What do you tell them?" And he just says, "I tell them he's a hero for Israel."
Right.
You know, and that's where that kind of thing is coming from. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I mean, there's hatred. You know what I mean? You know, like you see it on Piers Morgan. We was talking about the other day. Sometimes the guests, do you know what I mean? You feel like they could get somewhere, but a lot of it just turns into, do you know what I mean? It's like you got that old the Jewish rabbi guy,
yeah, Shmuley.
Shmuley, yeah, and there's no reasoning or there's no they don't want to make peace ever.
They don't
want to make any arrange. It's just hatred, isn't it? Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure there's people on both sides that feel that way about each other. Do you know what I mean? But as long as that hate's there, then nothing will ever progress.
Like the lies we're told now. It's reached that point where, like, I'm really, I really resent that, like, there's media companies that just hold up this bubble of thought that revolves around totally debunked points or totally ridiculous kind of things, like, and then we don't hear the kind of truth. We don't hear what's really going on, and like, it's like I knew there were lies being told around Iraq, but it's just this, it's like you got to keep your ear to the ground to really find out what's going on, and it's just like, it shouldn't be like. This is an industry, isn't it? It's like, filling, like creating a smokescreen of just nonsense, noise, blur, and then when the real shit comes through, you'll either be accused of following somebody who's misguided, or is telling you lies, or you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
So you really got to pack your evidence together, and start to say, no, this was actually in a parliamentary report, or this is what this is what people are saying, kind of thing, to push through all that crap. So, like, this stuff we're told about Hamas, for example, and the resistance, and the stuff we're not told about the resistance as well, is that kind of thing of, like, we have to believe we're the good guys. We have to believe we're on top.
Yeah.
We have to believe that the people that we've tried to say are barbaric and uncivilized are not actually freaking us out. Like, because they're highly organized, they're highly determined, and they are kind of crushing us in the field. So all we have left are some more bombers, but now they're shooting down our bomb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't want to have to backpedal on the shit we told you, basically.
Yeah.
But then you start looking at Iranian academics, start looking at Palestinian voices and people who are looking at that kind of stuff, you know. So, and we're in that world where you can easily tune into that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing's for sure is there's little kids being killed every day. Do you know what I mean? So regardless of, like, it's not right. Do you know what I mean? And
there was a bomb dropped on a school, and the people had to gather body parts in bags, hand them back to their parents, and say, they'd be like, "What's this?" "That's your son." And they knew, they had no way of knowing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it was just bury that.
Yeah.
You know, a woman whose kids were kind of incinerated. She said she carried 4 of her kids away in her arms because they were that light.
Yeah.
Euromed Human Rights Monitor reported that Israel had sent drones in around a refugee camp, and it was playing high volume the noise of babies crying and women screaming. And you're like, they've got a good reputation, Euromed Human Rights Monitor, but it was kind of like, well, who are they targeting there?
Yeah.
You're telling us Hamas doesn't care about the civilians, so why would a baby screaming, like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You're trying to draw people to you, but from what you've told me about Hamas, they don't care about their people, so you're not going to get a Hamas guy coming, are you?
Yeah.
Like, And it's like, but I knew you were bullshitting about that anyway.
Yeah.
Like, Hamas are fighting like mad, and they are punching holes in the Israeli tanks. They can only kind of endure what Israel has to give them.
Yeah.
Hezbollah, and most certainly Iran, could really fight back.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole thing is, you've got Sugar Daddy Sam in the background.
Yeah.
And but it's these kind of lies. Like, I've got to now get a book on Hamas, because the crap you're telling me, it just does none of it. You're telling me opposite things. You know, you're just contradicting yourself, like one thing after another. Like, I know there's a war dead grave in Gaza that has Jewish graves in it.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, it's the only cemetery that wasn't bombed in all this.
Right.
And it was kept immaculately.
Yeah.
So if Hamas and Muslims hate Jews, it was Muslims that were keeping these graves.
Yeah.
Why weren't they desecrated?
Yeah.
Why weren't they... Like, Israel has gone about, it's called necrocide. It's like the desecration of graves.
Mm-hmm.
They basically said, well, they went to a cemetery and they overturned a load of graves. And they basically said, we've got intelligence that remains of a hostage are in one of these graves.
Yeah.
So they bulldozed loads of cemeteries.
Right.
There's horrible footage of a woman just holding on to her son's coffin.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just there saying, right, come on. And the Caterpillar bulldozer is sitting in the background there waiting to go, engine revving and stuff. And it's, right, well, come on, give it up,
Yeah.
And they just march on and do it, like. Mass graves at hospitals. Hospital staff repeatedly saying, like, I have to wear civilian clothes when I leave the hospital, because if I go out in my scrubs, it feels like I'm putting a target on my back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been the most amount of medical workers,
Yeah.
journalists have been killed.
Yeah.
The most amount of people within this space of time have been plunged into food insecurity.
Yeah.
Let's call it famine. Most amount of hospitals, most amount of universities, and in such a short time. And it's like, this is the kind of this is the front face of something that's been going on for nearly 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Palestine is so important, because we can't do this to a people, and on the basis of such myths, like to draw on the Bible, like,
Yeah.
it's being debunked.
What's his name? The Israeli?
Archaeologist
No, the Netanyahu.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Because he said some things, didn't he, recently? He said something about basically starting war against, like, an old thing. I think we was talking about it, weren't we, the other day? He read some scriptures or something.
Amalek.
Amalek, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is him basically calling an ancient thing to kill all Muslims, all Arabs or whatever.
Well, it was to wipe out a people. So one thing to listen out for is when Israelis start talking about the Bible, then you're like, okay, they're talking to the Christians now.
Yeah.
It's not like they go on and speak in English about the Midrash.
Even though they killed Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
They're trying to tap in to get.
Yeah. That historical disputes. Yeah. It's feeding into the Christian Zionist movement. It's talking to the West and drawing on those Judeo-Christian values, so his reference was to Amalek. We know who the enemy are. They're Amalek, and the biblical quote is about going in and killing man, woman, child, and livestock. Wiping out the animals as well. And then there's a quote on the Holocaust Memorial Center, which has "We will not forget Amalek and what they did to us." And the Amalek were a fiercely resistant group around where Gaza is, who fought against the Israelites and the tribes of Israel in the ancient times in about 1000 BC. And so the quote has always been seen as genocidal, arguably genocidal would be, as a biblical quote. So to resurrect that notion, it's like, come on, he's telling us.
Yeah.
He's telling us his intention here.
Yeah.
Just fed into that. Then to draw on those references as well, it's just kind of a public relations.
What's the thing that
exercise.
you said that you've joined recently? You're part of
Palestine Solidarity Campaign.
Right. Okay. So what's that all about?
It's showing advocacy for Palestinian voices, opposing Zionism here, and sending donations. So we do. I mean, that's quite a lot of what we do is like raise funds and then send it to medical aid for Palestinians.
Yeah.
But we're always looking to publicize stuff and campaign on different things. It's just right now there's just so much to campaign on.
Yeah.
And people are feeling overwhelmed, and then they're feeling like that was always the idea, to overwhelm us.
Yeah.
In terms of psychological.
You wouldn't even know where to start to help people, sort of thing.
Yeah, and
It's just.
yeah, and also the kind of the lack of will by people in power. So the election, for example, was a key thing. Like, given the whole anti-Semitism moral panic that was there in the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Coming from that to then not calling out a plausible genocide, and instead putting in people like Luke Akehurst in Durham North, who's he's recorded as being on the Zionist lobby in the UK,
Right.
arguing for Israel, and he's the director of a group called We Believe in Israel.
Yeah.
And then he's given a safe seat in Durham North, and what was a safe seat was then totally challenged by the local people who don't want him there.
Yeah.
They don't know him or they don't want him.
Yeah.
And it's just this is what you're doing. You're not only not opposing what's going on there, you're aiding these people.
Yeah.
But yeah, Loki gives the breakdown of complicity,
Yeah.
And economic arrangements between Israel and the UK, including, I gather, with the MOD, the
Right.
Ministry of Defence.
Okay.
Certain things. I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but certain kind of, I think it's intelligence, is being controlled or managed by an Israeli company.
Right.
So, and then now there's a company called Palantir, who have recently managed to secure a contract with the NHS on NHS data, patient data. So they went for a contract during COVID, and OpenDemocracy.org, they challenged it. They said, with a data contract, you have to consult the people concerned. And in this case, that's the entire population.
Yeah.
And they challenged them on that basis. And then the government, instead of saying, oh, we'll do it legally, they just dropped the contract.
Right.
Because seemingly they couldn't have done it legally.
Yeah.
Or they didn't think it would work. So then Palantir were not awarded the contract, but then vied for it then a year after, and have now been given it. And Palantir is, the director is a Peter Thiel, but they're in with the military-industrial complex. So their slogan is we want to be in every missile, in every drone. And they handled a data collection thing for the police, a surveillance thing for the police in LA, and that was found to have inherent racial biases. You know.
Right.
They campaigned for, they did technological support for the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where they are. Has it gone out?
So good. Wait, keep it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't see these people out campaigning about these things. Like, why, you know, going back to the far right guys,
yeah.
why? Like, why are these things going on?
Yeah.
What's happened to our sovereignty here? Like, when it comes to, they're not protesting about Amazon not paying their taxes.
Yeah.
You know, if they were to really get into how people are avoiding tax,
Yeah.
wow, yeah, you know,
That's
you have to get
stuff to
into
really be
economics and stuff. It
angry
goes
and
back
right
to the
about,
national
yeah.
economy, and then the international economy, because that's where we are.
Yeah.
But
In a, you know what I mean? There's so much information, misinformation, false information. I mean, now we can look at a picture and just assume it's real.
yeah,
We
there's
don't
mad,
know,
mad
we don't
AI
know
stuff,
anything
yeah.
anymore, do we? Do you know what I mean?
Well, you have to check your intellect. You know, that's in a way, that's how I kind of look at it. Is like, it's not like you can't believe anything, but understand why you believe what you believe.
I mean, even recently,
core.
like a few examples of like big names saying things, you know,
Yeah,
Andrew Tate, you know, with the little girls that got killed.
saying it was a Syrian guy off a small boat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, some immigrant that's just fucking illegal immigrant that's just killed a lot. And before he deleted the tweet, it's already hit like fucking, you know, 50 million fucking people, or however many people, you know.
yeah.
Got retweeted so many people.
Well, he did a little video as well. So he did something where he was talking to the camera.
Right. You know, things like that. And then by the time take it down and apologise, you know what I mean, it's too late and sometimes, isn't it?
Yep.
You had the Olympics, do you know what I mean, with the transgender, that went, hold on, it weren't a transgender.
No.
But we was led to believe it was a
Yeah,
transgender.
that's what it became.
Do you know what I mean?
That's what
and
it
this
became, yeah.
and this poor woman, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Got you know,
It's like I see the
She publicly
concerns.
got crucified, didn't she?
Yeah.
When she hadn't done nothing wrong, and she was in the last Olympics and got her ass kicked, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, because she won, it's alright when she loses, because she won.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was like, but like, yeah. What's his name? Paul Logan, one of the Logan brothers. You know, this is a fucking disgrace. You know, she's suing them apparently, isn't she?
Yeah.
Who else? Who's the writer? She always fucking sticks her nose.
For Harry Potter.
Yeah. What's her name again?
J.K. Rowling.
She has stuck her nose in a few things, isn't she,
Yeah.
over the years, and ends up like making herself look like a twat. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, if people have made their money, they're not so bothered. Like,
yeah,
you know.
it's hard, isn't it? I mean, you
But-
say the wrong thing. Alex Jones, you know Alex Jones?
Yeah. Sandy Hook, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he got made to pay like £1 billion or something. And
I used to watch his stuff, but there was just something about how he kept on going about people getting followed by black helicopters, and it all just sounded like just, I don't know, something made up. It's like, tell me more. Like,
that's why.
is there any
yeah.
more detail to this?
That's why when he's on Joe Rogan, like, stop, right, explain, because you've just said 20 things in 30 seconds. Like, just break down each one of them things. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, there's a lot going on, and then obviously we've got Russia and Ukraine and all that sort of thing, which people's kind of just not really talking about that as much.
The Azov battalion, who came in, basically fascists, who came and visited Boris Johnson, and he had a photo opportunity with them, and so the worry with Ukraine is, and apparently Boris Johnson went over there. There was negotiations going on there were peace negotiations going on between Russia and Ukraine, but Boris Johnson himself went over there, and they argued that they could, through Western help, they could help prop up the Ukrainians and keep the war going.
Right.
And now it's like, I don't know. It's like they've made some daring recent raids, but it does. I think like most people say that they could not survive in the long term
No.
against Russia.
No.
The only thing that's, so you get into a war of attrition, but then the West has done that. Like America did that with Iran, Iraq.
Yeah.
What side did it arm? Both.
Yeah.
You know. So
That is the real winner in the world right
Yeah.
now, is the people who make weapons and people who make the ammunition. Anyone in any kind of arms manufacturing and dealership, they're the ones who's really winning
yeah.
right now. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the thing that the world seems to be feeding off is war and terror. Do you know what I mean? But the beautiful souls are kind of getting. We don't see them. Do you know what I mean? We know that they're there. There's
Yeah.
people practicing.
Well, you see them out in the street.
Yeah.
You see them out in the street.
There's beautiful souls, do you know what I mean? And beautiful people doing beautiful things, selfless things, people helping people, do you know what I mean? But this isn't what we see on telly or the internet or anything really. It's just all fair-mongering into it and just...
But it's how much sensationalism sells and how much conflict means action, means something to watch, the war stories or whatever. It's an aesthetic thing, that we like want to see something that's exciting, and there's some, like, again, on a gender base, there's, speaking as a man, there's something to that manhood thing of like, I know I can fight kind of thing, that feels confident.
Yeah.
Because like we get hierarchical, things work that way. But I'm not like Jordan Peterson saying, so just let nature be and let the hierarchy happen. Because, these neoliberals, they say money is the master,
Yeah.
And that's where their kind of hierarchy stems from.
Yeah.
And people buy into that because there's an understanding. Yeah, we inevitably fall into hierarchy, this kind of thing. Like, but that's also not the complete picture. Like, but like there's something to wanting to be a man and wanting to be able to handle yourself in a conflict as well. So we kind of get drawn to conflict. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I've always said, I'd rather a shield maiden than a housewife.
Yeah.
I've always said that. Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to see like strong women.
Yeah.
It's not just a male thing. Like, I'm not.
What
like
did
that.
you think about the opening ceremony of the Olympics?
I didn't watch it. But I got it.
Did you see
the Last
the
Supper.
opening ceremony?
I've seen.
Because they said it weren't nothing to do with the Last Supper, didn't they? It was
All right.
worship of the sun or something, apparently. But
that's what they said at the Last Supper, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
Well, it certainly looked like the Last Supper. And
So one thing I will say, in terms of like, I mean, if that had been like a depiction of an Islamic story, do you know what I mean? That Muslims would have kicked off, and rightly so.
Yeah.
With Christians, it's like it's just so used to it, and it's like, yeah, they just one of the biggest things in the world with all these eyes watching. Yeah, we just got mugged off again. Never mind. Do you know what I mean?
Islam seems to have a less kind of confrontational past than Christianity, and I think it taps into what we're saying about like what people are saying, what institutions are saying, and then what they do, and it's like that Christian thing of being meek and mild and all of this kind of stuff. But then when war comes about, where do you guys stand? And that's something that got me, like when I was learning about Christianity, I was like this, right? So what's the understanding when it comes to war? And so the just war doctrine, St. Augustine, City of God, he makes a argument about a just war doctrine.
Right.
And I just remember one of them was like based on a biblical quote, which was that two centurions approach Jesus and say, can we fight and still be Christians?
Yeah.
And he says, go about your business and be content with your wage.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, but the wages of sin is death.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's not a clear answer there, really, is it? Like,
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah.
like you'll find out on the field whether it's a good thing or not.
Exactly.
You know?
Do it and you'll find out. Yeah.
That's what I got from it. But then the way that was kind of propped up, it was like, so soldiers can be Christians.
Yeah.
I was just like, is that your best evidence? Like, is this, like, you're better off avoiding the subject, I think, altogether, like,
Yeah.
rather than kind of like pick at this kind of stuff, you know. And whereas in Islam it was a lot more clear.
Yeah.
You know, and so there has been war, but it's not like to the extent that Islam only spread through the sword. You know, that's like saying democracy only spread through the gun.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as simple. Like, there was plenty of trade routes and stuff set up, and people were kind of conquered or accepted Islam.
Yeah.
Helped the Muslims invade their own territory, like in the Iberian Peninsula. You know, from Granada through Spain.
Right.
Jews and stuff helped them. Everybody helped them because the Visigoths were in power,
Yeah.
and they were a very feudal society, and they just treated everybody like crap.
Right.
So along came the Muslims, and they were actually kind of called in, you know, into Granada, by a very high person, kind of a very high kind of principal in government and military. But anyway, they were invited in. Legend has it, by this guy. And they made a lightning fast conquest
Right.
of the Iberian Peninsula,
Yeah.
and then came to some Christians who held to Saint John and had, you know, certain tradition, and they were in the mountains and managed to hold them at bay. But that's the kind of history that happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like Islam was spread by the sword. Like, it went to Malaysia and Indonesia,
Yeah.
predominantly through trade. And
There's always people that have got things to benefit from being involved in things, whether it's religion
Totally.
or money or land or,
yeah,
do you know what I mean?
and like, people who criticize Islam, they don't understand that, like, you know, it's like the rule of law in this country. It's there by consent.
Yeah.
It's there by consent. It's not absolute.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who, like, are the institutions of law, if they don't abide by the rule of law, you've got this crisis in legitimacy, which is what's going on with the police.
Yeah.
There's a crisis in legitimacy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but it's there by consent. So it's like, well, if you're not going to obey the law, then I'm not, because I only signed up to this thing because I thought we were all in the same room.
Yeah.
But we're clearly not, so I'm happy to fight.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same with religion as well. It's like, I had loads of misgivings about Islam before I joined. But when I was like, yeah, but it's this, and this.
Yeah.
That's what I'm in it for.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest I'll just take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what does, in terms of like peace and serenity in yourself, what does Islam give you? Is it like a spiritual thing for you as well as like, you know, the life and your faith and belief? Like, what's the kind of spiritual aspect of it?
Like, there is, again, through Sufism, there's this mystic kind of experiential kind of understanding.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't really subscribe too much to that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm more interested in the social kind of picture, but like basic. I wouldn't say basic, actually, because, you know, it's just certain understandings that are about interpersonal relations, and even how I process information. So on that point, like, there's 99 names of Allah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Transformer, the All Merciful, the Most Merciful.
Same as Method Man.
Is it?
Method Man had 99, obviously.
Right. Okay. So he's
Allah,
yeah. So one of them is al-haq, like the reality or the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw this, I thought, okay, so actually, if I think about it, like, God is the truth. And so then I thought, so actually, when I hear other Muslims say to me, and that's the truth, and I have done this, I've responded, it's all true.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true to what? What's it true to? It's all true. The lies, the propaganda, the crimes, the religion, the virtues, the vices.
Yeah.
It's all true, but what's it true to? Like, So don't tell me that's the truth.
Yeah.
Like, I see where you're coming from. I see what you're about, but what are we going to do about it? Or
Yeah.
what's your intention? Why are you even telling me this thing?
Yeah.
You know? And but also another one was, do not curse the time, for God is time.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that I've thought that makes sense to me.
Does it?
God is that force that's like causing all sorts of things to go on.
Does it talk
know,
in the Quran
and marking up
about
certain events.
speaking in tongues? Or is
No.
that just in the Bible?
No, that's like a Christian thing. And
Yeah.
again, it'd be like, Jesus spoke Aramaic, which used to be a kind of predominant, like Welsh in this country. It used to be spoken all across the country.
Yeah.
Aramaic used to be spoken across a broad part of the Middle East. But then Hebrew came in, different Akkadian and Babylonian languages came in. And but Jesus was one of these people who spoke Aramaic.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting in itself. But he certainly greeted other people, other peoples.
Yeah.
And I often think that it's about talking to people in a way they can understand. Like,
Right.
Not talking to yourself in ways nobody can understand.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're going mad, like, in a room.
Because I always
Literally
used to,
talking
when I'd
blah,
be reading, I'd be thinking, who's the blind John the Baptist by the River Jordan and all that, speaking in tongues, and it's just
Right.
So he's a crazy old man, basically. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, certainly there was probably some ritual stuff,
Yeah.
going on with all that, because the baptism was a new thing, a new practice.
Yeah.
So they're instituting it. So, something like that. You start a social movement like that is fundamentally challenging, like, ideas about sin and stuff like this power of redemption and stuff, which it was certainly made to look like Jesus died for.
Yeah.
Died for the world kind of thing, died for your sins.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in all this. I give a bit of time to it.
Yeah.
If I feel it's worth my while. I'm interested in what must it have felt like.
Yeah.
To be in these things where you're challenging institutional religion.
Yeah.
Because they've sold out to the empire.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do it with new practices and perform miracles, through acts.
Yeah.
Muslims don't believe that Jesus was crucified.
Okay. But they don't think he was killed?
They don't believe he's dead.
They don't believe he's dead?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they believe he ascended. They believe what's said is Allah made somebody look like him
Right.
on the cross.
Okay.
And it's all quite interesting because there's been recently, like in the last 30, 40 years, there's been a lot of analysis on like the potential that Jesus had a further family.
The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail.
Well, yeah. Well,
That's
yes.
what that book sort of...
Yeah, that book. Yeah, exactly.
Which then they made the Da Vinci Code was a...
Yeah, it was inspired by that. Yeah, drew
Yeah.
on that, didn't it? So,
And then they ended up in Scotland, didn't they, in the Da Vinci Code?
yeah, because there's a Templars place. I've been to that
Yeah.
place. Yeah, just outside of Edinburgh. But yeah, like it's when you're discovering these things in the Quran, but then you're reading about these things that's going on with kind of pseudo intellectuals.
Yeah.
And they're speculating and drawing on biblical sources.
Yeah.
And presenting this picture, and it all becomes very credible.
Yeah.
It's like the Quran actually just buttresses that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with this for now. Like, again, the truth of it, it's more the implications of it. If you don't believe Jesus died on the cross, then, gosh, you're not going to be a Christian.
Yeah. 'Cause that is the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and
I
thoughts
believe
on
everything but that. Well, that's the main bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, turning over that's where I'm at. Like, it's
Yeah.
Oh, turning over the tables and money. Yeah, that was great. Like doing the whole, getting the Pharisees with the denarii. Yeah, that was brilliant and all that. Dying on a cross.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, same as I've always tried to take what I can out of the stories in the Bible. It's just an amazing book, regardless of anything. It is like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These stories, however true they are,
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can take a lot from these stories. I know a lot of the stories seem to be recycled from older cultures and civilizations and stuff. Do you know what I mean? I like going deep into like ancient. Do you know what I mean? Like the old Mesopotamia and stuff like that, and
Right.
you know a lot of the old civilizations, magic, and kind of that was all within their beliefs and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it kind of hit a point where magic and was looked at as the devil's work, weren't it? You know, and
Well, yeah, kind of like witchcraft and
stuff like that, yeah.
Then science clinically coming in and
because one thing that is a big part of my life and has been is like psychedelic drugs. Do you know what I mean? And there's no really mention about them in religious books and stuff, is there? I think there is kind of like people obviously make up their own stories. Well, yeah, Moses was quite clearly on something when that happened, and this guy was probably on da. And the people link between different things, but
yeah, well, there's stuff about how like marijuana freely grows in that area and stuff, and
all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
what kind of oil did Mary Magdalene, whatever,
even the old
anoint Jesus
when they used
Jesus
to sage the church. You know,
Yeah.
sage.
incense and sage, yeah.
Salvia dividorum is a sage.
That's yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you can,
hard hitting.
you know, you can imagine they was probably all a little bit wavy. Do you know what I mean? But through everything that's going on, obviously in the world and in the country and in your life and everything, how are you still being creative and
So, I mean, I use my hands in my work, building
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I've done a few pictures actually. Yeah, done a few illustrations recently.
because you draw, you're an amazing artist, writer, singer, spoken word. You know, it's not.
I'm a
just-
kind of jack of all trades and
Yeah, yeah.
master of none kind of thing. I've dipped into the rebel songs.
Yeah.
Done. I like to. I've done a few pictures, but I've spent time with them, and I'm pretty proud of them. So
Where did we meet? Was it Twilight? Did you come to Twilight, the nightclub
uh,
in
I
Angus Square?
was there, like
For taking pictures.
yeah.
I'm sure that's where you came up to me and introduced yourself. Was at Twilight?
Probably was, yeah. I think so. I can't remember the first time actually, but
Yeah. 2013.
yeah, but it was
so-
it was a long time before you were getting your own nights together and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I remember meeting you at Twilight, and you used to come and take pictures and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then we started doing the elbow grease thing and things like that.
Yeah.
And you'd always be there supporting. You'd done a lot of the flyers, posters,
Album covers.
album covers, artwork,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So you've always been involved in the local scene, and especially with me, helping me with, as I say, doing artwork and stuff like that.
Did poetry on Dante, yeah.
Yeah. So my album Dante, if people haven't heard that, go and listen to that. That album went underneath the radar, and I'm kind of glad it did, in the sense of I like having albums that are so. Do you know what I mean? I've never put so much work into an album like I did with that.
All right, yeah.
It took me years to write. It didn't take me
Right.
weeks or months. It was like there was more than one story sort of going on within it, and do you know what I mean? I'd write a song, and then 4 months later I might write another song. So it was a long process. Do you know what I mean? And you were doing parts of the original poem, weren't you?
Yeah. Kind of slightly rephrased to get a rhyme out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So also, there was the McBeef thing.
Yeah. Hip opera.
Yeah, yeah,
So I did a rap version of Macbeth.
yeah.
Wrote, directed, did the main part. Yeah, that was a drive. Like basically, I've been writing it for years, and finally got it together. And then we floated it to the guy at the art centre,
Yeah,
Pasco, and then he said, "Well, you can have start of January." This was in this was September, mid-September. You can have the start of January or you can have next August.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're geared to go kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we said, let's go start of January. And just came out and went, right, we got 3 months to get a show together. Like, I've got a script.
Yeah.
I've got people who are like, yeah, let me in.
Yeah.
And then it was like, but I had to do a lot of like design and stuff and get it down and visualize it and,
Yeah.
you know, think about lighting and acting and who's going where and what's happening here and
Yeah.
then lead the sessions and that was just a joyride. Like,
Yeah.
that was one part where it really felt like ecstatic, you know, that was like, right, that's the goal, go towards that, everything else just,
Yeah.
you know, has to fit in with that.
Yeah.
And that's the way life was for 3 months. It was really good. And then we got it together for like basically 500 quid and a lot of voluntary help.
Yeah.
And everybody enjoyed it. And we did 2 nights in the art centre and we got 100 people in each night. So it was good. I would have wanted it to be better,
Yeah.
you know, as always. So
Yeah, you're going to be your own worst critic, aren't you? But, you know,
Yeah.
the fact that you even put it together, yeah, even just the writing of the script and stuff, do you know what I mean? It's, you know, that in itself.
Well, the personal drive was there because, you know, Macbeth is about psychological and political terrorism, and a load of the themes really appealed to me. So, so it was written in the context of the gunpowder plot, and so, you know, where the entrapment of Guy Fawkes, basically, like,
Yeah.
and having informers amongst the ranks,
Yeah.
but looking to, you know, frame a terrorist act on a religious minority,
Yeah.
just to justify a war abroad, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what was going on when the gunpowder
Sounds
plot
familiar,
happened.
one of them.
Yeah, it sounds
innit?
familiar.
Yeah.
And then Macbeth being this Scottish king who took the throne at the time that a Scottish king took the throne,
Yeah.
but he's the kind of anti-hero. You
Yeah.
know, it was a kind of funny play. So it was kind of like, well, what did Shakespeare think of this? Because there was lots of different things around the gunpowder plot.
Yeah.
You know, and I was kind of dipping into what it must be like now. There's loads of people who go around thinking like there's stuff to do with these terrorist acts that just doesn't add up, like this 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And so I was kind of like, what did Shakespeare know? And then I found out that like 2 of the plotters ended up leaving London, escaping London to escape
Right.
the punishment, and staying in a house next door to his family's Shakespeare's family house in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Wow.
I was like, wow. And I was just, but then Shakespeare spent time amongst the court and kind of mingled with higher society and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if he was kind of hearing that, like, yeah, kind of, I don't know, this is a setup kind of thing. I don't know,
Yeah.
you know, like the gunpowder plot for, you know, for over 400 years has been like, what did the government know and when?
Yeah.
You know, because the whole thing was revealed, like the king just miraculously was handed a letter that talked of impending threat, but was totally obscure. But he somehow divinely drew from this, read into this that somebody's going to attack Parliament, and Parliament's meeting tomorrow. Go and check the cellar. Lo and behold, there's Guy Fawkes.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just those kind of things
Yeah.
that make you think. It
Of
didn't,
course, because you just grow
Didn't
up
go
and you
down
just
that
assume
way,
that
did it?
history is true, don't you? These are the things you
That's-
read in
that's public relations.
textbooks when
you know?
you're at school.
And it's just a way of like, you know, showing that the king is divinely
I
inspired.
always think
you know?
about how history must be, if you go to school in a different country, how they talk about the English as opposed to how
Yeah.
our history tells us about history, do you know what I mean?
Well, that's it. Yeah. Imagine what it's like for the other people, like the legacy that's there, like, you know, arguing over what's in the British History Museum and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, no, he did steal it. No, he didn't. But we got it in our museum, so
It's ours,
no,
yeah.
you did steal it. Like,
Yeah. The crown.
Sorry, I'm not talking to you anymore.
I was about to say the Queen's crown, the King's crown alone, isn't it? With all these mad rubies and things that come from
Yeah.
all over. Did you see the thing that they found the other day? They're a big diamond or whatever it is.
All right.
The biggest in a fucking, what they call the mines. They search for diamonds and stuff like that. In some part of Africa, some massive thing like this anyway. It's the biggest fucking thing that's been found. Probably
Oh, right.
by some fucking...
An uncut diamond. Yeah.
Probably by some little 10-year-old kid who's been given 5 pence for it, do you know what I mean?
But that adds to this thing of like kind of Britain's shame, and yeah, just on that, it's kind of like, I don't know, there is this kind of guilt amongst people, but I don't relate to it, like, because like it's like I've kind of always said, like, I could be proud of my Irish heritage.
Yeah.
But my mother was born in England, right? And I used to resent anybody saying anything bad about English when I was growing up. Then the more I read history, the more I was like, oh, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
That's what this kind of thing is about. It's kind of general statements that kind of are sometimes historically based, you know, and just totally justifiable, like, you know. And, but it's like, I could be proud of Irish heritage because we fought off the tyrant and gained our independence, you know, through force of arms. And that all sounds good. But our problems became our own then, you know. So it's like, I also know that there's a lot of problems in Irish society.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of problems in Irish history. And it's very tangled and it's complicated.
Yeah.
And people take loyalties for different reasons. And if you really want to understand something, you've got to kind of zoom in on it.
Yeah.
You know, if you really want to embrace it, or, you know, get your head around what actually happened when it comes to history. So, but English people aren't in that position, and it's this thing about nationalisms, like more like choose your nationalism, you know. Don't think of it as like, you know, proud to be English just opens up this can of worms. Proud of what?
Yeah.
You know, if these guys, you know, on the far right, they had a sense of culture. If they had a sense of culture that wasn't binge drinking, you know, that wasn't about being football casuals. You know, I'm not saying all of them are, but these guys are rising to the forefront of the movement. So it's either like, are you still on board with this? Because this is where it's going.
Even with the, it's what benefits people, do you know what I mean? Because, yeah, there's people in this country, illegal immigrants that have come over, but if they've come over on a boat from
and they're not
an Islamic country, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you, your coke dealer from Albania, do you know what I mean? Who they're possibly, don't quote me, do you know what I mean? One of the biggest fucking human traffickers in Europe, do you know what I mean? You know, but they come over here and serve a purpose to our coke sniffing culture. You know, they're the biggest coke dealers.
Yeah.
So you know, Albania, they come, they go all over Europe. Do you know what I mean? They just getting traffic left, right, and centre. But
yeah,
I don't really hear so much of a problem with people having problems with them. Do you know what I mean?
No, that doesn't come. I mean, it's there, that kind of resentment, and it gets intensified when there's drugs and stuff going on. But it's certainly not as amplified as this war rhetoric against Muslims. But just on that point, like, the phrase illegal immigrants is not right, because, and that's the first kind of port of call, isn't to say, right, stop, what, you know, these guys need to stop what they're saying, and either listen or piss off.
Yeah.
Because it's like, British immigration policy contracted, so that in order for you to claim asylum in Britain, you had to come to Britain.
Right.
So Suella, there's a famous footage of Suella Braverman in front of a commission, being asked questions. She's talking about it, and then the guy just goes, "So if an asylum seeker is in Africa, what are the channels? You keep talking about these channels, the appropriate channels. What are the appropriate channels?" She didn't know. She didn't know. She had to pass to her assistant.
Yeah.
And then the assistant was, well, there's registered UN routes, and it's like, yeah, but then, like, it basically means, it all sums up that, like, they have to come to Britain to register for asylum in Britain.
Yeah.
So to preemptively call them illegal is wrong, because they're
Legally,
here to get
yeah.
processed, to get decided upon.
So
You're not
the
the
letter
judge,
of the law.
therefore stop using that word.
Yeah.
You know, to just... And the whole way it's been framed as an illegal invasion.
Yeah.
You know, this is typical for its projection. It comes from, like, when we talk about far right, it's othering.
Yeah.
You're constantly going on about the other because what you are, like, can't be fully expressed.
Yeah.
You're like, if your culture has become so like a vacuum, and that's what money does to culture.
Yeah.
It creates donut cities and it creates donut culture.
Yeah.
You know, it just empties out the whole of it. And so, but if that's what if they don't have anything like their own kind of culture, then they other, and they project their resentments on minority groups and look to suppress them.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of far right, like, is to other things. And then the next step is then fascism, where you go into a full racist hierarchy.
Yeah.
And determinations and things
Basically,
like
they're
this.
just
But
not being
we're
happy about something, so just bullying the easiest targets.
vent, yeah. And then they're been given slogans and stuff, and really they should be there with the anti-capitalists, the people who are protesting the wars.
Yeah.
They should really be there, like, challenging the system.
Yeah.
But they're not being encouraged to think like that. They don't think like that.
Yeah.
And it just goes the other way, where it's like, you're not thinking at all.
Yeah.
You know. And so any kind of legitimate grievances these people have, it's like it's been put to the back of their minds.
Yeah.
If they are there, because it's kind of like, but all the things you're complaining about are trivial compared to these other issues that are going on behind the scenes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a superficial kind of worldview.
Yeah.
And then the idea that if you kick off, then government should change its policy. Well, that, you know, acts of violence in order to change government policy, that's the current definition of terrorism.
Yeah.
So, like, that's why this language is being thrown back at them.
Yeah.
And they'll reject it, you know. They'll
Yeah.
reject that they're racist. They'll reject that they're far right.
Yeah.
They'll reject that there's any hint of fascism, because they don't understand the terms, you know.
But yeah, do you know what I mean? Using the hate in the air to just attack people for colours and minorities and religions and cultures. Fuck that, do you know what I mean? Like, England has got room for everyone. Everyone's different beliefs, and do you know what I mean? We can all live and get along and have different beliefs and different ideas and different. Let's just get on with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, the idea that England is constricted in space, I think
There's a lot of space. We
there's
just
a
don't
lot. There's
utilise the
actually a
space.
lot of, you know,
There's a lot of
we
space
could be
in
a
the
lot
world,
more
yeah.
resourceful.
Yeah.
You know, how many people are driving by one person in a car, one person in a house,
Yeah.
one person with 3 houses,
Yeah.
you know, but it's all investment money, you know, it's wealth,
Yeah.
it's inheritance, you know, that's the way it's going to be. So many of British people, so many of the global population are urbanized, but so many British people now are urbanized as well. So immigration, minorities can easily, like, it's very visible and communicable.
Yeah.
And so then these stories circulate and get told and travel up and down the country, like,
Yeah.
and then you have these kind of weird moral panics. I don't think it's necessarily like a legitimate panic on their part in terms of they're worried, but that it comes across as this kind of frenzy.
Yeah.
And an outburst. But the real thing is, like, you know, because I'm part of leftist groups, but I'm part of the mosque as well. And I know refugees and I know them personally. And it's that difference between being a leftist and being in a campaign group that actually doesn't know many Muslims or minority groups.
Yeah.
The difference between that and the difference between being a part of a community resource like a mosque is like I'd go to the mosque and I can have conversations with people who may or may not be directly affected.
Yeah.
You know, and I can see how it's affecting them in their day to day. Like
Yeah.
highly educated people just feeling like they can't leave the house, you know, because of what's going on, and that psychological kind of assault that comes with it. You
Yeah.
know, and was there with Black Lives Matter. Like when you saw the treatment of individuals, and then it's projected, you know, around the world.
Yeah.
And it actually, there's a part of it that becomes a kind of psychological assault on hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, like a kind of microaggression.
Yeah.
Where it's not something you're going to resist necessarily, but if it builds up and builds up and builds up, then it creates a kind of trauma. And I think part of what was going on during Black Lives Matter might have been essentially about that.
Yeah.
You know, people would gladly show a cop beating up a black person, you know, just to show you.
Yeah.
Because what happened with lynchings, right?
Yeah.
What happened with lynchings was people were lynched, and then photographs were taken, and then photographs were distributed,
Yeah.
and they were like kind of trading cards and things like this. It had to be, like Macbeth says, you know, he talks about like for a terrorist deed to work, it's got to be seen.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be seen, and that's part of it. Like, is these kind of acts being televised?
Yeah.
And now with our phones, you know, we see the acts that are going on in Gaza,
Yeah.
but it's this feeling that the politicians must be looking at this stuff too.
Yeah.
And yet the get out clause is, oh, that's like new technology, that's for young people kind of thing.
Yeah.
They could always say that, like, but it's like you have to be seeing some of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
You're seeing the same stuff as us.
Yeah, and it's horror, you know. And then there's people who are obsessively, like I'm one of them, are zeroing in on this issue because there's that much kind of significance to it.
Yeah.
Going back thousands of years, you know, the biblical arguments being put up on Facebook,
Yeah.
and then them trying to denigrate the idea that there was ever a Palestine.
Yeah.
You know, so I have to like tell them about Herodotus,
Yeah.
and then shut the fuck up. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And one thing's for sure, knowledge is key. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Knowledge is you know, the greatest weapon of all, possibly. You know.
Well, they say knowledge is power, but you know, if you act according to that knowledge,
Yeah.
you know, because thinking these things, knowing these things, but not doing anything about it, then
Yeah.
that's not going to help.
Yeah. Yeah. We've all got a responsibility. Do you know what I mean? It's seeing something that you know is wrong, seeing something that's unjust, but it's whether you do something about it. And sometimes people will see things, and sometimes it's a bad idea to do something about something. Perfect example, you know, the stabbings in Notting Hill Carnival. The woman who died, she was trying to break up a fight,
Oh,
weren't
right.
she?
Yeah.
You know, if she hadn't tried to break up a fight that she was not a part of, but she saw someone being attacked,
Yeah.
she's dead, and her kids ain't got a mum. So yeah, you can see why some people don't get involved in stuff, but you should get involved in things.
If you feel able to. I mean, there's no point in inviting harm on, you know, like,
Yeah, I'm not even saying like go to war, right? I'm just saying sometimes it might just be a case of writing something on social media, saying something, arguing with people on building sites, like,
Yeah.
nah, I don't agree with what you're saying, and I'm gonna challenge you for that. Do you know what I mean?
one thing I also wanted to say about the kind of far right protests is education, third level education. There's authors of a book called Brexitland, and they chart a whole load of different dynamics that went into Brexit, and they looked at ethnocentrism, you know, and where you look, your worldview is about people's ethnicity.
Right.
adopting that worldview. And so they found that people who'd done third level education were much less likely to think ethnocentrically.
Right.
And it like stands to reason that, you know, when I left college, I had a worldview.
Mm-hmm.
It was about graphic design.
Yeah.
It was about something I could do, a practice that I could do. You get into that, the last thing you're really thinking about is the color of people's skin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you get more international in your outlook, then then you just got to take on. You got to broaden your worldview.
Yeah.
So, you know, so many people on the gig economy in a 0 hours. I work in construction, like I say. Like an unskilled labourer is the highest suicide demographic in this. Right. And that's what I was for 2 years. But like I say, I had other things. I was semi-skilled, and I had a drive and a goals and things I wanted to do outside of work. So I was happy. But like, there's plenty of people I see like that can slip. Mental health is a massive issue, and it cuts to the core of like the combination of what you do and what you believe, and your knowledge, and putting that knowledge into action. Because if you haven't been educated, then what you're doing is servile. It's like that gets at all of us, you know. So, and if you're doing mundane jobs and you can't get through because of you're born into poverty, or, you know, there's plenty of programs out there that'll help. But I just mean that somebody in that position can't stay there for too long, or they'll crack up, like, and they'll really start to, if that becomes their life, that they're just doing that and then going out and getting smashed at the weekend, that's oblivion.
Yeah.
You know, a year down the road, you're either like you conditioned yourself to that, and your worldview is tiny.
Yeah.
And also you know, you've put up with other people's crap who are going to be richer than you and are going to own the property that you build, but their names will go down in history, but yours won't.
Yeah.
You know, you've just been this little part in it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way society works, like
Yeah.
an underling. You know, if you get into that experience too much, then you know, if you don't have any education or anything, you're going to be more likely to be stuck in that, or poverty. So like the kind of resentments about that, like third level education needs to be addressed, you know, where we could actually like know more and do more.
Yeah.
Rather than what's happening with the neoliberal influences. Like they draw on Adam Smith and the Hidden Hand and the Wealth of Nations and stuff like this, and that was imbued with a hierarchical, almost like a feudal outlook, and that's what these neoliberals argue. Jordan Peterson has argued like for intellectual hierarchy. So, well, like, how are you going to check that?
Yeah.
While at the same time that like he believes there's genetic evidence, you know, that says that black people are inherently, you know, unchangeably intellectually inferior to white people. And he's saying this 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. He's in a conversation with Stefan Molyneux. But so he's talking about an intellectual hierarchy, and where he's really coming from, or that thinking about imposing a hierarchy and then trying to hide the fact that it's racism. It's just purely about race. It's not racist because we said like the Chinese are cleverer than white people, so it's not racist, is it? No, it is racist. You're denigrating a race. You're saying black people. Where's the IQ gene? You know, there is no intelligence gene. There's no black gene. You know, there's no black gene. It's not a genetic thing. Blackness is not a genetic thing. Like in slavery times, a person could be three quarters white, but still be seen as black. You know, you're a quadroon, you're still black. You know, Irish were racialized as black and white in history. So after the famine, you had academics in this country, when there was an influx of Irish people, academics would talk about how the Irish influx would negrify British society. Okay, like, you can't it's so absurd. You can't argue it.
Yeah.
It's like, we see you for what you are, right? We see you for what you are, like,
Yeah.
you know, and that's your thinking, that's your worldview. It's based on race. It's ethnocentric, and you know, at the heart of that's where the racism comes in. If it's not even about, like, it's not a psychological racism.
Yeah.
It's not about, like, I don't know black people and I don't like them because of what I've seen on television.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm from here, I should be doing better than these people.
Yeah. They're inferior, and how are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's trying to raise yourself up on a ladder,
Yeah.
you know, that is like, it's about the exploitation.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to feed off something. And like, through the history of, say, slavery, for example, like, you know, like ancient Ireland slavery, people had slaves, and that was a class thing. But
Yeah.
with that came allowing their people to indulge in more cultured crafts.
Yeah.
You know, the seamstresses can now sew their dresses, and they can imbue more into the culture. So, like, slavery propping up a culture,
Yeah.
you know, beneath that. That's the kind of tiering that's going on, like, here. So now we, like, with the far right protests, we've had this explosion of, we don't like you, and that's gone here, there, and everywhere across the country.
Yeah.
So even if that dies down, and then leftists stop their counter protests, people know that there was that kind of a certain amount of people
Yeah.
who orchestrated
Feel like
themselves
that,
this
and
kind
the
of a
veil
way.
got, you know, opened up, and can't take that away now.
And they have, but it's the minorities who have to live with that, in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, like, the kind of protest and the counter protest was all kind of arranged. And there's plenty of, you know, there's plenty of people who are anti-racist. But the thing I found about, like, being white, and I don't want to think of myself as white, but, you know, in a world that's become highly racialized, then I'm white.
Mm-hmm.
And even if historically I might not have been considered white, you know,
Yeah.
200 years ago I might not have been.
Yeah.
So white people, white people often tend to intellectualize racism,
Yeah.
and can only imagine what it must be like. But if you're somebody who's in touch with black people, refugees, disenfranchised people, people of color, then and you're friends with them and they're part of your social situation, then you can really see the troubles that they go through, like, on a more detailed level.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really kind of, it's mind bending, you know. It's like, we have to immerse ourselves. We have to become multicultural and post-racial.
Immerse ourselves from mental slavery, in the great words of Bob.
Yeah, because it's like I've always seen it like monoculture. Monoculture is like, yeah, we all believe in this. This is why I avoid things like, oh, it's basic knowledge.
Yeah.
It's common sense. I don't actually believe in those things.
Yeah.
Like, common sense is like an implication, like, oh yeah, we all believe this. No, but we
Yeah.
don't. Like, we don't actually, and there's people who don't believe it for very good reasons. Like.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to listen to them, like, just, you know where your boundaries are with these universal values.
Yeah.
So, like, that, this monocultural idea, like, thinking it's weird, because it's like trying to skate over everything. It's like, why does the world have to be complicated? Why can't we just simplify it?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in Islam. Is why do you have 5 schools of thought, but with just one Islam,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just
But
like,
life is more complex than
Life
that,
is more
and this, you know.
you know, and you'll only appreciate that when you're dealing with people on a human level, like.
Yeah. And like you say, you have to be around people to understand that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what a shit life it would be if you only ever did just spend your life around white English people.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn and beauty and everything, and do you know what I mean? Just
But-
embrace a little bit of, you know, and
And this is what things like hip hop did, right? You know, and rap.
of course,
And speak and, you know, like, yeah. You see how some of, say, like the grime artists and the kind of battle raps they did just in their rooms.
yeah,
It wasn't about making money. You know, there was an energy there that was very raw.
yeah. The
It was about
expression,
doing this, you
yeah.
know, and getting a name for it. You know, it was a very real existential thing, like, I think. Yeah, but like hip hop then communicating to the world, obviously it's gone industrial now,
Yeah,
you know, as is want to happen, like.
it was always going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking maybe we should wrap things up.
Yeah.
You know, we could go so much more into so much of this, and I'll definitely have you on again. Do you know what I mean?
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
And but yeah, thanks for coming on
Thanks for having me.
and enlightening me to some things. You know, I've definitely learned some stuff today that I didn't know, and hopefully
Yeah.
enlightening some of some of the guests, some of the people watching, the audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some stuff that
I know it's a whole jumble of stuff, isn't it? It's like a
yeah, but you know,
collage.
yeah, sometimes you do go all over the place, but you see the way things are interlinked and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, I've always admired you. Do you know what I mean? And you're not just a lot of my friends are creatively talented, but there's much more to you than that. Do you know what I mean? I see you as someone who actually cares. You know, revolutionary fighter of sorts. Do you know what I mean? And someone who says things that need to be said, and you stand on your beliefs, you stand on your business, and I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
respect that, and you know, the fact that you're doing the charity work and stuff like that, and trying to help. Got nothing but
People,
respect for
yeah.
that, bro. And but yeah, keep up with the creative side of things and all that as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
No, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, and all the best with your future ventures, and hopefully we'll find a little bit of peace in this country
Yes.
and in the world,
Yeah. Inshallah.
and with all of ourselves, you know,
Yeah, I hope so
because
too.
that's what the world needs now, a bit of love.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely. Spread
But
the love,
yeah.
people.
definitely. But
Spread the
yeah,
love.
thanks again for coming on. Thanks for watching, and
Thank you.
yeah, we'll see you all again soon. Peace.
Gangster. 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 Gangster.
Gangsta Hippy Podcast.